early this morning that the member for Pinewood used his laptop. Early this morning that the member for Pinewood played a portion of his earlier speech. He requested permission to do that. The chair proceeded to that because the chair is of the view that we are moving in the world of technology in the information age, and we should do everything in our power to advance the parliament in that regard. As a matter of fact, if we had gotten the large screen TV regard, as we had advocated for, we would not have to rely on his laptop. So that is, I believe, in the advancement of what we want to do in this chamber. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Pinewood. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Pinewood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I may, and please guide me, Mr. Speaker, because I can still hear and listen saying some things if you use the phone. I deliberately simply use my message presented in this house. Nothing else, no propaganda, anything outside, nothing. And it was a recording, because you have spoken about it many times, about even how they manipulate the House content. That was the exact content of the House of Assembly, and it represented the first presentation. And so I thank you for your understanding, and I also support that initiative to advance the technology of the House. Mr. Speaker, but going on, and as always, I rise by the grace of God and for the good of Pinewood. That reminds me of my prime directive, not to lose who I am in Christ, and not to forget that even though the PM is my boss and the leader, and they elected me under an F&M government, you got to understand that. When you elected Reuben, you elected Reuben as an F&M government. That meant that you want me to fight for Pinewood and the F&M agenda. Now, let's get this clear so you all can understand, because I would have really been vexed if Pinewood didn't get it with what was given, and I'm grateful. That is a 60-40 deal. 40% is my party, but 60% is the bottom line is I represent Pinewood. And so nobody should have any issue when I represent the contract that I signed, that the members of Parliament of Pinewood signed with an X, that this member of Parliament, that this candidate running on the F&M ticket, we want him. I want to go further, Mr. Speaker. I always believe in teaming my ego. We all have it, but I team my ego, and I believe in seeing reality. Pinewood did not know Reuben like that, but Pinewood knew Doc. So when they voted for me, that was also an express mandate that we believe in this man's vision. And we want that to be followed. And I have 5 years to do that. So I need my people to understand this. So when I believe, because I feel it in my spirit, some opposite may come and assume, they say things like sucking up and stuff, brother. I love man, I don't like man. I love my brothers. I love my father, but I ain't never like man. And honestly, I follow the leadership because I see the sincerity in this administration. I want us to understand something very, very clearly. This is a team sport. And this is why I will not stand up here personally and aggrandize or take the glory for this tremendous thing that has been done for Pinewood. I will say something as personal when Doc said to me, say, Reuben, I want you to go into Pinewood. I want you to look out for these people. I said one thing to Doc, and he'll remember. I said, we're going to take this flooding serious. I didn't come out on no campaign trail with it because I don't like playing with people's feelings. Check the record. The only time I speak about it is when something substantive was said. I'll give an example. I didn't speak about anything until after the Minister of Public Works said certain things about the monies that were allotted in previous budget to begin the pilot program. Because my people have suffered with this long enough, and I ain't playing no games with them. This ain't no political game. And this was done, and I am grateful for my colleagues, because all the little boy really had to do was to remind my colleagues, as I did in this place, that I don't question your loyalty to Pinewood. I reminded them that I am counting on it. Now, the only thing would get me vexed, because y'all know my mind was really, I said, Lord, this could happen. Y'all wait till I reach in the cabinet office just before the budget comes to tell me something in the budget for Pinewood. Now, y'all know. But that ain't nice, man. Y'all should have leaked something to me. Because I was saying, Lord, oh boy, this ain't going right. I was like, Lord, because no, I'm committed. To me, there's no such thing as a weak member of parliament. You just need to be committed to do what you need to do to make it done for your people, and go kamikaze if you have to. This is Pinewood's seat. I'm glad I didn't even have to go that, because once my colleagues were reminded, I thank you so much on behalf of the people. The reason why I can't gloat about it is because my Bible said the end of a matter is better than its beginning. If you follow my budget debate, one time I asked in this parliament, I say, do it in chips or chunks, because I know things was tight. And I said in this parliament, I said, you know, if former administrations had just put 2 million this year and 2 million the next year, this would have been fixed. So at least we got the commitment, but I don't have I want my residents to have the luxury to celebrate, because it is a progress, and I want them to celebrate with the ones who made it happen. But I want to stay with my ugly vexed face and keep this up, because I got to see this through the end. Because I'll be the first to admit what was allotted will not cure the whole process, but it is the first tangible beginning. And as long as I'm here, I have to see it through the end. And when that happens, I will celebrate. But again, I want to say thanks. You know, it amazed me, you know, I think about the story of the leopards and so on and so forth. And I raised this in the house before, especially as it relates to Exuma. Because sometimes I will get a little jealous because Exuma seems to be getting everything. And I listened to his speech, and I said it before in his presence, that I have an issue. I don't mind you being opposite. But this administration has done so much for his constituency. And before you simply say, you consider it robbery to say, you consider it robbery to say thanks. Man, listen here. I was talking with Rev. One time me and Rev had a strong conversation, and I remember it, and I was driving up St. Anselm Hill, and I called him back because he was wrong. I know he's wrong, but I'm still daddy, so they always win. And I called him back, and that was the first time I ever said a strong word to my dad. I never cursed my dad, but I used the S word. I said, Rev, hear what I'm saying? I say, I don't give, or whatever else. How you treat me is on you. How I treat you is on me. I can respect you, and I can always treat you right, regardless. See, because I understand a couple of things. How I honor him is going to set the pattern for how Robin honors me. I think I've said it in this House Assembly before, I don't need to like you to treat you good. I could treat my seniors right because the young people watching, and when you see this great? Because as I get old, that's the blueprint for how they're going to treat me. So even when I come to this house, I don't come trying to make a spectacle, you know. My intention is to speak truth. And I'm very concerned with my country. And from what I see and what is being offered, I am very concerned about the wrong leadership of this country. And trust me, that statement isn't even about politics. It's about what I see and what I understand and what does not need to be there. So I want to reiterate again, because there is a fear, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, but some of the residents, you know, they fall for the propaganda that, oh, this ain't serious, they ain't gonna do this and they ain't gonna do that. That as soon as your ministry gets your handle on it, I would appreciate it. To have a Zoom meeting for the community so they can understand. And I would like the Prime Minister to come into Pinewood when it's time to break that ground, to meet the people, to see what he has done for them. I would greatly appreciate that. But Mr. Speaker, I also want to stand up and show this. I'll fold it. We are in a fight. And no matter how good the budget is, if we don't deal with this, we're going to have setbacks. This is in everybody's hand. You know, I said this in House Assembly, and it amazed me during the height of the pandemic and the shutdown of this nation. We lost $1 billion in revenue, you know, just from COVID. That's what make up that $3.5 billion that involved Dorian and COVID and everything else. But if we combine ourselves together and do what we need to do, we should not have to shut down again. During the COVID time, the height of it, NASA had a contest for the most beautiful photos from space. While people were complaining about no hope for the Bahamas, in the middle of all of that, the Bahamas was winning internationally as the best photo from space. And y'all could tell me God ain't good? You know, sometimes we got to learn to listen, you know, we got to listen. One of the biggest problems we have with listening was, let me tell you something, the same way with that foolishness with John Canoe where they blow all that money that he could have put in Pinewood. At the very same time when the former Prime Minister was pushing Junkanoo Carnival, all around the world, Junkanoo, pure Junkanoo, was rated #1, and they ignored it. And go for a hybrid that did not work. What if they had pumped that into Junkanoo? And I heard some negative whispering about the $2 million and the land. I heard some. That's going towards Junkanoo. Junkanoo was rated worldwide. I need to speak to our Bahamian people, you know, because words hit harder than a fist, and words are very, very dangerous. How you represent your country can determine people's perspective of your country, and their perspective of their country can determine whether they want to come to your country. That's why it was so destructive to our country when we had billboards around almost stating how much murder and all that around, but yet we will not see a positive billboard out there encouraging everybody to come and get vaccine. This is indeed very, very serious time, and if we don't come together, we can lose our people's job. And I said it to you, the 2080, 20% of this budget impacts the GDP. Most of that other stuff is impacted by what you are doing out there, the straw vendors, the bus drivers, all you guys. We got to get you all going. You are a part of this economy, but we're discouraging them. And we don't need to be doing that. I have been doing a lot of things in Pinewood, and I really want to thank Chiquita, who works in the office. I also want to thank Evadne Fowler in Walnut Street, and also Natasha Roy, because we had an interesting Mother's Day. No, I ain't gonna buy no carnation and roses thing stuff. And I said, point blank, that ain't happening. But we were able over Mother's Day week to take over 24 mothers grocery shopping. See, it's one thing when you give them the food packages, and many are grateful, you know. But if you interact with the people as much as I do, you will understand that a sense of normalcy is so important. And no, you won't see it on Facebook because I don't do that. And you should see the sense, just a sense of, first some was very coy and shy and some was elated
because maybe they thought it'd been some big scene, but no, I took the ladies out, and also I did that because these ladies could have talked to them and encouraged them. And for the first time, some of them were able to go into the food store and just shop how they wanted to cook their meal. I want to say something that sounds strange. See, we don't appreciate these things, you know, but I remember Michael Jackson. Because he was such a celebrity, he would rent a whole food store, pay people just to be in the food store and ignore him, pretend like they're shopping, just to have a sense of normalcy. Do you know this is a double-edged sword? Your sense of normalcy want to get you in the clubs that we're prepared for and cause crowds to cause this thing to spike. I need you to stand down for a little bit longer. But that same sense of normalcy that is happening in the United States is generating the revenue that is anxious to come to the Bahamas. And almost 60% of them already got their vaccine. So I'm asking you, if you delay your gratification just a little bit longer, take the vaccine, and let's tap into their flood. Then all the foolishness you're going to hear about the budget can't make it, you're going to understand why we believe it can. You're going to hear from Chester, the member from Exuma, you know, because he liked to harp on the VAT thing and the VAT increase. I don't doubt that. Yes, I voted for the VAT increase. And there was a DPM that came to Pinewood. Our then DPM, Peter Turnquest, came into Pinewood. We were one of the first constituencies, and we had a town hall meeting with our people there and got them to a point that they understand, and they understood. But I want our baby people to understand something simple, you know. They make it seem like the government putting VAT on your back. But the truth is, not even 400,000. There's probably about 290, maybe 320,000 of us who really pay taxes in any way, because most are children and certain things. But there are 7 million tourists under this government coming in. I want you to think, really, who really contributes to the VAT bill? Is it really on your back, or is it our way of getting more through taxes out of them 7 million people who visit a country that is less than 500,000? I'm just saying simple things, you know. And then on top of that, check the records. This administration has been giving more in tax break and pumping money back into you in your time of need than I have ever seen. When you hear about historic storms, historic COVID, you also see historic giving. Historic concessions, and they make sport of it. This is what is happening right now. This is what is happening right now. This budget debate is about you. It even ain't about Reuben. I want y'all to see what the doc cooking and go and find it out. Don't listen to these people who would come to you and try and make it seem, like I said, oh, he's a dictator, he don't like you. And I think they're doing that because they're trying to they're trying to create a screen to sort of hide their leader. So the pot is trying to call the kettle black, but they gotta realize Doc isn't a pot. Doc is a chef. And something is being cooked up that is very good for this country. Mr. Speaker, I said, and I'd like to look at what is being said by the leaders of the opposition members and how they discuss these things in this budget debate. But I want to just pivot to Pinewood for a second, because so we can understand. From day one, I outlined what I intend to do with Pinewood. And these are some of the things we've been doing. And I think I would even start with some failures. Nobody like to talk about failures. I don't have a problem. I know all the David problems, and it's still motivational to me. Within the first year, we had a problem with finding jobs in my community. Yeah, lots of problems. But the throne of God will always be called the throne of David. Man after God's own heart. And I sat there and I had difficulty, and it's hard as a back, you know, they say a backbencher, and you know, you have to learn government, learn everything else, finding jobs for my people. And I move around and I looked at the cruise ships and I say, wow, you know, those are hotels. And I started to engage the cruise ships. And I got to know the cruise ships, the people at Royal Caribbean and the other persons. And then you all would have seen on Facebook me taking Pinewood residents on the cruise ship. See, those who don't know thought I was taking Pinewood on the cruise ship for fun. That wasn't for no fun. I grabbed the grandmothers, bus loads after bus load, and we took them there. And while on the bus, I talked to them. I said, listen here, I'm bringing you here because I'm showing you these are industries. These are hotels. These are opportunities. I want you to see it firsthand because I want you to go back to your grandson and drive them and say, listen here, these opportunities are real. You can travel the world. You can make money, and the money you make, you don't have to spend because you're getting your free food, you get your health care, they'll fly you wherever they need to go. And we did all of that and we pushed through. I had an opportunity and I posted on Facebook. I put it on my phone to everyone in the community. I walk around and talk to people. I remember even one guy getting his hair flat, say, I'll be there tomorrow. I missed the House of Assembly that morning because I had a bus, a jitney in the front of my constituency office, and all they had to do was get in that bus and go for the orientation courses and then come back because it was certain. It's on my Facebook page. Guess who showed up? No one. And that was an opportunity for 100 jobs. And then you remember you saw me on television with this one guy introducing him to the president of Royal Caribbean, who started as a cabin boy and ended up being the CEO. That was the one person from Pinewood, and guess how he got there? He went down there himself. We look and we say, oh, he ain't doing. Many times, and I said it from day one, I could take you to water, but I can't make you drink. And I can show you many, many cases of that. But I'm glad because I'm seeing the interest building more and more. We have, as you know, the Scouts group in Pinewood. And again, I'm going to remind, where your constituency is, Peter Turnquest. East Grand Bahama. I'm going to remind East Grand Bahama because he promised while he was DPM that he will come with our Scouts group. We have a registered Scouts group. Pinewood already now will have the first community regatta boat. And that's going to be built by Mr. Moxley on Walnut Street. And the children as a part are going to build it. We're going to start with the C class. Because we're building the culture in it. I have Mr. Munnings helping me out through the Ministry of Sports. Thank you. Member for North, Grand Bahama, right? Iram. South Central Government. Yeah. We all got to put the names in front of you. Because I call names. I want to thank him because we have persons from the Olympic Association helping it. And we are building the Community Sporting Federation. So we can bring all of them together. Do you know that Pinewood has probably the top and the highest per capita of boxers? Quincy Triller, Millet, Pratt, and all those, and Toriano Johnson, the Johnson family, and a whole bunch of boxers. I say the community needs you, so we're going to have a boxing league. We have touch football going in Pinewood, and I'm pulling all of them together because I am building things that when I leave, it is there. You know why? Because my Bible always tells me, a man who don't leave an inheritance for his children is worse than an infidel. So I don't know what you say, but people who leave a deficit of $1 billion. When I leave Pinewood, they would have things that they own and that is established. They have their own Kiwanis Club. The purpose of that is so they can start helping the children in the community themselves. They have their own Toastmasters Club. Why? Because you need to learn to present yourself. All these things are established. We have our own Growers Club. We have about 60 homes inside that, operating from that. We be digging up in dirt and chicken manure all day. And it's so exciting. But there's a plan for them because I'm trying to see how interested they are in working together because that's going to be a focus on the co-op. And then I'm going to beg for land for them to be able to build and do something that they can make money. I'm trying to help my community to understand that you're an economy, man. 5 years is a long time to waste. We need to get as much done as we can. And when I ask for all hands on deck, it's to help me, help you. Let us work together so this can happen for you. I am the ambassador for CARICOM. I've had the privilege of moving around. And even where I go, I've got to remember not only do I represent the Bahamas, myself, my faith, but I also represent Pinewood. And I look for opportunities for my people. And so what I'm encouraging to do now, I said, listen, man, we need to have our own food store, you know. I say, you know how much of you all here? And you're getting mad at the Chinese and everybody else? I say, this is an economy. You're complaining. We can do this. And not only a food store, because you're still buying from wholesaler. I say, you know something? We're going to be a distributor. All throughout the Caribbean, I've been identifying products and services just so we could be our own Delbinas and our own Thompson traders. We are now, then they be bringing the products we distribute. We distribute it among ourselves. And so we take it to a whole new level. And we're working on that now. And that will be done through the co-op. When COVID hit, I was moving between the states on my own funds because I am working to build a 501c3 for Pinewood. You know what that is? That is so at the end of the day, if any disaster hit Pinewood or any product that they need to do, that they can get international donations. And when persons donate to Pinewood, it will be a tax write-off for them. So it's an incentive for them to do it. What stopped me from doing the nonprofit here was at that time, you remember, we were amending the law. And the only thing that's really stopping me, because I don't tolerate foolishness when it comes down to money. I ain't want to handle nobody money. So I want the community to come together so we can work together and set up a proper structure so when these things start coming together, y'all get your own accountability, because you can see the wrong side of Reuben if you start talking about teeth in. No, that's just how I am. I stay far from things. Even in my own businesses, when somebody bring me some money, I say, pass it to him. There's always somebody between me and $1. I see right now, Mr. DPM, that Member for Michael, some people even on Facebook saying, oh, the millions that's going to be pumping the Pinewood is just so he could thief money and get some contract to do whatever else. I say, you know what? It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. But that's how people think. And you know why? That's why I respect my leader, you know. The way he operates things, the way he operates his cabinet, he's trying to keep things above reproach. It doesn't necessarily mean something may have happened. But as he said from day one, it's about accountability. It's not about the other cabinets when we have blatant evidence. And all they do for one is move a slight portfolio away from him, or the next one ignore it, or when the fight was in the cabinet room, say it didn't happen till you realize it happened, then say it happened, but it didn't happen that way. We say about transparency, but we don't want to live the level of transparency. We don't want to face the demons that we all have, but yet we want to stand up in the face of people and say, that one ain't qualified, but you didn't ask the person who's saying that, are you? Are you qualified? This is what is happening today, and Pinewood is growing for the better for it. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited about this because a young Pinewood resident, he just got married, just moved out of Pinewood, has been helping with building the community website. It's digital platform, it's paid platform, so you can make money. I want Pinewood to be an economic powerhouse where people could come together and not only just live in their community, but they can have success in their community. And one of the biggest economic empowerment will be when this drain system begins to be tackled. I'll give you a little hint though. I really was preparing a lot of row. And Gino, he's a realtor. I said, man, listen, I got to go back to Parliament because I got to make this case. I know for a fact that because of this flooding thing, the land value is down. I need you to do a search on Pinewood property and quantify it and everything else and so forth. I didn't realize how much work that was entailing. Because I know for a fact that once this is done, your little $100,000 house is going to go up in value. And that is just the same equivalent. So it's not $2 million coming in Pinewood. When you look at the value that is being pumped into you, you will appreciate and realize that, wow, I have equity in my home and equity in my land that I did not have before. That's why this is so important. That's why we have to take a stand and make sure this happens and this goes all the way to the end. That's what Pinewood is doing. I want to encourage my residents. I want to encourage my Bahamian people. Look for yourself at this budget. I know you all say you all don't like the House Assembly, but when these ministers speak, you need to listen. You need to find out what's in it for you. I'll give you a hint. The foreign people is be listening, and as soon as they hear about what's coming, they start preparing. You need to do the same thing for yourself. There has been no better time in the history of our country for small business than now. There has been no better time in the history of the Commonwealth Bahamas for small businesses than now. There has been no better time in the middle of a crisis for you to live your dream than now. And don't let nobody talk you out of that. So go to the Prime Minister's office, go to the website, find out what's going on, go to agriculture, find out what's going on. Whether it's the blue or the orange or the green economy, take advantage of it. When the Prime Minister fly around to the family islands and some people criticize him, notice what he's been doing, bringing you all your land paper. Yes. There could be some of y'all that's going to get wealth, enhanced wealth through your business exploits. And there'll be some of y'all that have enhanced wealth because the Prime Minister is working on the land registry, which will clear up the title to your land. So many behemoths are already millionaires, member from Marco City. I was surprised at how many small people actually own keys. I said, well, mother, I didn't even know that owned some keys. And they living in little. You know how many behemoth people in the family island own large swaths of beachfront property and generational property? And I guarantee it's now and it will continue into the next term. The Prime Minister will release that economic stimulus to you. And so land is wealth. So I encourage all of us, please, don't get dismayed. Don't listen to the rhetoric. Don't listen to the discouragement saying that basically ends up meaning, I don't think you're ready for it now, or wait for me to give it to you. There's a commercial say, I need my money and I need it now. Don't get upset because you're waiting on the lines. Because no one, whether it's your doctor, your lawyer, anywhere, there's always a line or a process, but it's there for you. Listen here, y'all be strong. Sunday is the first Sunday. And I'm very, very serious about this. First Sunday is the first Sunday. And I said in the beginning of my presentation that, and I'm calling on all my people, you know, this administration has done good by Baptists. We passed the Baptist bill in this house. Baptists, that's 70,000 of y'all.
The largest?
That's 70,000. And everyone from the presidents was right here. I know I was Baptist too. This administration passed it. I am not trying to be political. I'm just saying the truth. Most of our Baptist leaders has always been good friends with both parties, but more rooted in the PLP. But under this, no, it's the truth. It's the truth. And I'm not being offensive, it's the truth. But this administration passed the Baptist bill. In this budget, there are exemptions for clergymen. I think in the last budget, there was exemption for you with your buses and other different things. Am I correct? This administration has never forgotten the church. At every turn, I hear our Prime Minister been asking through this crisis to pray for him. He wasn't like another Prime Minister our face and tell us, say, you can go to God all you want, you got to still come to me. Perry Gladstone Christie. That's the truth. Stand up and say, you can go to God all you want, but you still got to come to me. And they try to call a leader who's been begging for prayers all the time not humble. Our church, the churches have been a bulwark, a hero in this fight. And I'm going to ask them something, not politically, you know, I'm going to ask them something in the same spirit that they do with their money, and we speak with blessings and tithe. I'm going to ask them to pray for this budget. I'm going to ask every church, every pastor, all of your people, you all like to say, if my people that are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray. Well, if you believed with the opposition say that this nation is damned, then I simply say to you, then it's time to lift up this and say, God, we present our little bit to you and ask God to bless it. I am sincerely asking that. And then I want you all to understand that whom God bless, You can't curse. You can ask God to bless this budget, and on the other end, start preaching the administration back to what you said, Mr. Speaker. Administrations are called by God. This is not the end all be all. All of us need grace. And I would be honored, and I'm humbly asking, whether you're Catholic, you're Anglican, you're Seventh-day Adventist, all the people that are called by his name on behalf of your nation, this is the offering.
Whatever happens.
Pray for God's blessing over this and the administration. Pray that God will rebuke the devourer called hurricanes. Pray that God would allow us smooth sailing for the recovery of our nation. And I guarantee all that is projected here will be done exceedingly, abundantly, above and beyond what you ask or think. Or are you all afraid that if, like some persons do, that if we get help, that we may fall in love with the program? I'm asking humbly. Would you do that for me? Mr. Speaker, Pinewood supports this budget. Pinewood stands in second. Oh, I have no problem with 6 more minutes. I'm trying not to think about the things which I know in my spirit is going to be said. It's going to be said. Yes, it's going to be said. I'm not stopping. That's going to be said next. But let us not poison our country
Pray for the success.
with our vile speaking. Let's speak this country up. Let the weak say I'm strong. Let the poor say I'm rich. That's why I hate when they go talking about the over the hill, like they poor people, they rich people. Listen, I have to say it. When the administration finished building those government complexes that we have promised all through the over the hill, that's going to raise your value. That's going to raise your standard. I am excited for the over the hill area, but don't let nobody poison your mind. Find out for yourself. Find out for yourself. Listen to this budget debate and find out what the doc is cooking for you. Fine with rest.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member for Pinewood. That $2 million that has been identified for Pinewood. I just want to remind you that Nassau Village and Pinewood are contiguous constituencies. And it is easy to trench across the road, across the boundary, so that the flooding and the western part of Nassau Village can drain out into South Beach as yours go. Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you. As many? If you recognize this Honorable Member for the Exumas and Ragged Island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the people of Exumas and Ragged Island, who have given me my voice in this parliament. To the people of Exuma and Ragged Island, I am most grateful to you, and I restate my promise to continue to serve you with diligence now and into the future. I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And I thank you for your prayers. Mr. Speaker, during my contribution to this budget debate, I plan to respond to the Minister of Finance Budget Communication and the estimates and documents he laid last week. There is good news and bad news. The good news is that this will be the last budget presented by the Minister administration before it is voted out of office whenever the next election is called. And this will be the last bad budget from this administration that the Bahamian people will have to endure. The bad news is that only the member for Kalani knows exactly when the next election will be. That's the bad news. And we do not know how long he is minded to make the suffering last. The bad news is the Bahamian people will have to live with the decisions this administration makes with this budget, and the results could be calamitous. This budget is a disaster, much like this administration's entire term in office. Government debt has increased over 40%. The last 3 years of this administration has given us the worst fiscal outcomes for any consecutive 3-year period of GDP in Bahamian history. This administration came into office promising better fiscal management, but will go down in history as the worst manager of fiscal affairs in a modern Bahamas. This budget is sheer fantasy. It would stunt the growth in the country for decades unless its policies are reversed and reversed quickly. Don't get me wrong. There was never any question that Dorian and the pandemic would bring great economic hardship and lead to heavy borrowing. But the Minister administration's navigation of the pandemic, added to the dangers presented in this budget and the accompanying communications, will ensure that things get worse before they get measurably better. This is a budget characterized by short-term thinking and ignorance of the severity of our debt position, and it contains reckless electioneering. You know, some people are calling it the Junkanoo budget because the Junkanooers are getting a headquarters. I don't have a problem with that. We need to make sure Junkanoo continues to develop and grow as the vibrant cultural experience it is. But I wouldn't call this a Junkanoo budget. I associate Junkanoo with a good time and as a spectacle of the unbound creativity and hard work of the Bahamian people. This budget is a mess, and it's far removed from reality. I tell you on the other side, your exuberance is misplaced. I call this the Alice in Wonderland budget. This budget is firmly rooted in some sort of dream realm where the Minister of Finance sees things as he would like them to be and not as they are. But his dreams will likely end up causing great nightmares for the Bahamian people. You know, I am not an alarmist, but this budget worries me about the future of our country. So let's look at some of the fundamentals. The core of the budget is the revenue estimate. In this area, it is painfully obvious that something is wrong. The Minister administration is either incompetent or intentionally trying too hard to make these numbers work, or both. This administration believes that it would collect 18.3% of GDP, or $2.24 billion this fiscal year, after falling woefully short of this year's modest target of $1.76 billion. It believes that this can be accomplished despite granting perhaps an additional $100 million in new concessions. This is simply unbelievable. And you added some concessions today, just as I thought you would. You're making it up. You're making it up as you go along. This is simply unbelievable. It is more likely that revenue would be around 16.5% of GDP, or $1.78 billion, not as bad as the current year, but about $400 million short of the predicted target. Looking at the revenue details, it is easy to see the areas where there would have been the greatest revenue shortfalls: VAT, real property tax, and customs. These are the areas where the Council Revenue Enhancement Unit was making the most progress. And though all budgets are rooted in hope in terms of forecasting revenue, there's too much trafficking in hope on the revenue side. The Reverend said today, faith without works is dead. The government is hoping that tourism rebounds to pre-pandemic levels, but most objective analysts who are independent do not share that view. Tourism in terms of cruising and overnight stays will not likely return to 2019 levels for at least another 24 months, 18 to 24 months at best. This will be the case even with the home porting that is expected to begin soon. And these are just realities that should be conveyed to the Bahamian people. Tell the Bahamian people. This administration predicts it will collect nearly $600 million more in revenues in the next fiscal year than in this one. Yet, it has met none of its revenue projections since it started its term in office. This administration has in fact missed revenue targets on average, perhaps of 10% per fiscal year. So to think that you will increase revenues by more than 35% is pure fantasy. Sorry, I'm not buying what you're selling. I'm not buying what you're selling. We see on page 10 of the estimates a projected VAT collection of $845 million. This represents a growth rate of 29% itself. Absolute fantasy. On page 12, excise taxes projected up by 30 million despite the giveaways. Again, more fantasy. On page 23, we see a significant increase in immigration and work permit fees. I mean, you gotta hear about that. On page 25, we see 40 million in health visa revenues. And then on page 174, we see 37 million in expenses related to these health visas, a net of 3 million. And I'm wondering why there's a profit on this. Are we looking at a new tax here? Will this new tax be in the form of a travel health visa? Then there is the fantastical gaming revenues. You claim you will now realize revenues from a tax on gaming winnings. This seems imaginative. I assume this is projecting the new patron tax. This is an ongoing court matter, I understand, and cannot be completed by July 1, and will not likely be finished in court for months. It is also under heavy opposition from patrons themselves. It is more regressive taxation that will likely drive gaming patrons to the black market to avoid paying a winning tax. The reduction in regulated taxable revenue will shrink as a result of loss of business for the industry overall. And the growth of the unregulated market would put us back where we were 7 years ago, with the risk of large sums of money operating outside of the formal economy. So you're not going to get 15 million from a tax on gaming patron winnings. You're just engaging in financial gymnastics, and you should stop it. We cannot keep operating as if something is going to magically happen to turn us around. Because the truth is that magic never happens in real life. Nothing has been presented so far to indicate that there's any realistic hope of turning this revenue story into reality. Now let's look at expenditures. Again, on the expenditures side, we see shameless, dangerous electioneering that will have real negative consequences. Recurrent spending is increasing by more than 250 million, with a $20 million increase in wage bills and a ramp up in new hires, even as you work with the IDB to contemplate right-sizing the public service. One looks at this budget and a sinking feeling occurs when we see our administration engaged in bloated election spending as we stare down the barrel of yet another crisis. When we look at the capital expenditure side of your plan, much of it is just not grounded in reality. For example, the Minister of Finance claims they'll build another block at PMH for $70 million in the next 18 to 24 months. Okay. No one really believes this will happen. The 4-story critical care block at PMH cost more than $100 million and took 4 years to complete. You're not going to build and outfit anything comparable now that global construction prices have skyrocketed. It doesn't matter though, because an incoming administration will have to borrow anyway to meet the commitments you haven't provided adequate funding for. But I do welcome upgrades to hospitals. And I trust there is a plan to modernize the entire health system. We also see the capital budget has been reduced by over $140 million for budget, with a theme of accelerating recovery from restoration to growth. What words? This would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. This budget reduction is a very decelerating action. This capital budget reduction is a very decelerating action. The big driver for this reduction is the Ministry of Works. Is it possible that the capital commitments, such as amounts owed for work already started, surpasses the amount budgeted? Perhaps. It might be a good time to repeat, therefore.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael on a point of order.
The honourable member has asked the question, and I'm obliged to answer it.
You have your time. You have your time.
The answer is
Point of order.
the answer is no.
Honorable member, let me hear the
The
point
answer
of
is
order.
no. The answer is no.
Speaker, I'm happy to wait to hear the Minister of Works. I'm keenly interested in what the new DPM has to say. It might be a good time to repeat, though, therefore, that this is a badly flawed budget with overly optimistic revenue projections and underreported expenditure commitments. Now, when it comes to GDP, we certainly don't understand what the prediction for 4% real GDP is based upon, as the IMF has given a prediction of less than 2% for this year. If you want more of a dose of reality, for the last 5 years, we've had no growth and indeed economic contraction. A projection of nominal growth of 14.1% next year is absolute fantasy. Last year declined by 25%. Employment likely remains in the 30% range. Initially, I had thought this 14.1% projection was just carelessness. But now I believe, after hearing your exuberance, that it was a deliberate attempt to put lipstick on a pig. I have heard the excuse from this administration as to why the numbers do not agree with the GDP numbers published by your Department of Statistics. The excuse does not make any sense, as the department publishes a quarterly GDP series. So the GDP estimates for 2019-2020 should all be from the Department of Statistics, and for 2020-2021 should include 6 months of hard data. According to the Department of Statistics data, in that last calendar year, the country's GDP shrunk by 25% in constant prices. The last 2 quarters of 2020 are the first 2 quarters of 2020-2021, the current fiscal year. The GDP for these 2 quarters shrunk by 24% and 21.24% respectively in comparison to the previous year's numbers, and yet the government is predicting a decline of only 6.3% for 2020-2021. This is highly unlikely, simply not believable, an absolute fallacy. This seems like ostrich economics to me. We must, all of us, step into reality. And then when it comes to the deficit, this doesn't appear attainable either. We are likely to overshoot it. and $1 billion deficit is already flat out scary. It's already a staggering 33% of the total budget and not sustainable by any measure. The revenue projections are unreasonably optimistic and unattainable, as I pointed out earlier. Revenues appear overstated and unrealistic, even though they are still 30% below the 2018-2019 levels. The expense projections do not appear attainable either. You're committing to spending more than $250 million more than this current year. What we have seen from this administration in the past is the withholding of capital spending in order to try to come into range of your deficit. The government's fiscal health is a good barometer of the economic health of the country. This administration, though, which has delivered 2 years with deficits more than $800 million, is now forecasting an extremely optimistic deficit of $951 million for the next fiscal year. This is a 3-year average of roughly $1 billion. From the very start, we warned you to focus on managing the economy and to focus on economic growth rather than bean counting the deficit. But you didn't do the work, even before Dorian, even before the pandemic, and you won't meet your target now with this Alice in Wonderland budget because it's an election budget. And you will spend all of what is budgeted and more, I predict, in your delusional attempt to cling on to power. It won't work, though. It won't work. But that don't mean that you won't try. And I tell you, this is very dangerous. We are in a precarious place, and this administration is frankly playing games. To the extent we miss another revenue target is the extent to which we borrow more foreign currency, increase the deficit, increase our debt, and continue the economic slide on this already slippery slope. I want to emphasize that we have very little confidence in your numbers. In fact, I should also emphasize, we have very little confidence in your leadership. You missed your budget projections before Dorian and before COVID. Your lack of credibility is expensive, and it's costing us dearly. Mr. Speaker, this administration, on that backdrop, says it has a plan. We disagree. We still don't see one. Hope without works. Faith without works. Playing against all recent experiences, hope is not a plan. Hope that there will not be a major hurricane this year or next year or the year after is not a plan. Telling the Bahamian people that we can accomplish based on nothing I can see what almost all the world's economists thinks we will not is not a plan. Hoping that small businesses see a slight tax incentive and will automatically grow and take on more staff is not a plan, not even close. What you have are costly, half-baked ideas you intend to implement, but it's not a plan. The truth is, and I know because I am in this space, local investors are somewhat shy of investing more into an economy that has been glaringly mismanaged. There is a wait-and-see attitude on that front, and it would be harder for small businesses to start even with the tax concessions. An unusually high level of unemployment translates to depleted savings with no prospects of savings on the horizon. Yes, the SPDC will be able to help some access funding, but will it be enough to sustain new businesses through a protracted period of economic recovery? And the bureaucratic hurdles that still exist to this day impedes business startups, let alone growth. So unless this country can begin to show positive signs of growing the economy and getting people back to work, there will be very little results in investing in small businesses and getting people to expand them. When to do anything in this Bahamas, there's a need for foreign exchange to buy what you need to operate. And to get that, you need a growing economy. You need foreign currency inflows. Meanwhile, there is no detail in the communications on foreign direct investment or any significant local investments. I listened intently. I said at the beginning of the pandemic that key to the recovery was that the Prime Minister must become promoter-in-chief. Yet, you did it. This administration is just whistling and twiddling its thumbs as if the massive, roaring level of economic growth predicted is a foregone conclusion. On the other hand, it is trying to downplay the debt we're taking on in its rapidity, scale, and cost. Mr. Speaker, let me just clarify so nobody is mistaken. We have a debt crisis approaching, and this administration appears to be ignoring it altogether. Ostrich economics will not help you. It will not help the Bahamian people.
They're hiding it.
This administration failed to bring a debt management plan as promised in the last fiscal snapshot. This administration's failure to put forward a plan to manage debt means our country is viewed as a riskier bet, which makes our borrowing more expensive. Your failure to plan or to reckon with the hard decisions is costing us dearly. It is evident in the high cost of borrowing. Of course, you did not listen to my considered advice when I said go hard and go early. Instead, you saddled the Bahamian people with interest expenses as high as 9% on new loans. That money could have gotten us some infrastructure, some healthcare facilities, some education plans, could have helped to promote tourism. We now have a situation where medium-term foreign debt principal, listen to me carefully now. We now have a situation where medium-term foreign debt principal repayment is going to present an incredible challenge in a few short years. The government claims it is making investments in sinking funds to repay this debt. You neglected to contribute to the sinking fund for over a year. And now your plan is to put $53 million a year for the next 3 years aside. Well, fool me once, shame on you. You know how the rest of it goes. Even the $53 million won't be enough. We're going to have to start repaying principal payments on foreign debt, of which we've taken on well over $1 billion on an escalating scale in 3 years' time. Meantime, debt servicing at $512 million is now our largest single expense. We'll be paying that at the level or more of the $500 million for a while, at the same time as we struggle to meet principal repayments. Last year, I warned the former finance minister with respect to interest projections. I note that the Ministry of Finance is projecting interest expenses coming on target. If this is accurate, then what accounts for the large increase in the average rate of interest in government debt? In the current budget, it is 4.2%. In the upcoming budget, it is 4.9%. That is a 16% difference in cost, a large and worrying increase. I note the minister did not speak about debt sustainability or about debt strategy in his communication. Our borrowing is at staggering and unsustainable levels. Simply put, based on the Department of Statistics assessment of 2020 debt to GDP, our debt to GDP, based on the Department of the Statistics assessment of GDP, will be at or over 100%. This is even more worrying than the debt. What is even more worrying than the debt to GDP ratio is the debt to revenue ratio. This income has declined from 32% on average in the last years of the PLP administration to a projected less than 20%, depending on the revenue forecast and expenditure overruns we see as a real possibility. Your debt is growing much faster than your revenues on average. Lenders often look less at the GDP with regard to debt. They often look much at income, the income you're bringing in, the revenues, and how it will impact your ability to service your debt. We are getting to a point of no return. And a new administration will have to look under every rock and make some tough choices early on to stabilize this situation. It bears repeating that interest expense as a line item is now bigger than education or health. Look what we have come to. We have to decide here and now how we stop the rapid escalation of foreign debt. The current budget seems to be philosophically imitating what is happening in the US, which is spend some more, and then hope that will turn it around. The US cash can be printed. It's hard, it's convertible currency. But for a developing country with a fixed exchange rate, this would be a disaster. All we're doing is putting a claim on reserves in the near future. And this is a road to having those outside the Bahamas passing judgment on the value of our currency. I want every person, every Bahamian to understand that I don't say these things lightly. I want every Bahamian to understand that this path will lead us into the hands of the International Monetary Fund. And while the IMF certainly has the capacity to help, a structured debt plan with the IMF will not allow us the space to make the hard choices on our own terms. That is where this administration has us headed. And we are racing down this path, whistling in the dark as we kick the can down the road. We have to control this deficit spending and this level of debt, or we will forever be living in the hands of the finance man. Debt under this administration would have increased by nearly $4 billion by the time this administration is kicked out of office. And following the worst health pandemic in modern history, we still do not have a health infrastructure to meet not only our citizens' needs, but also our millions of visitors each year. We have to have a clear path to paying this debt off and restoring domestic and international confidence in our economy. But this administration continues to do and say nothing to inspire confidence with the local business community or the international investors or bondholders or multilateral agencies or rating agencies. They are all losing confidence. Regrettably, in the face of existing challenges, this is a perfect storm for disaster, because the reality is this talk of dollar stability through foreign currency borrowing is nonsensically unsustainable. We are borrowing to pay the light bill. That's what we're doing. So let's just call it what it is. The truth is, when the economy fully opens and when the avalanche of US dollar interest and debt payments begin to hit, our foreign currency holdings will see real strain on reserves, and that presents a real threat to the peg and our ability to maintain dollar parity. We warned the country about this administration for 4 years now. We warned this administration for 4 years now. And what do you bring? Alice in Wonderland budget. And here we are, we're in Wonderland, deep, deep down the rabbit hole. But here we are. As for the plan, I noticed the Prime Minister gave particular focus to insisting they indeed have a plan. They don't. Ain't nothing there. You can keep saying you have a plan, you have to demonstrate a plan, and you have not. You have, as I said, some ideas, a few initiatives. This does not constitute a plan. A plan includes getting down to the nitty-gritty.
Honorable member, I have extended you 3 minutes already. How far? Oh, keep the clock running then. Okay.
I'm grateful for that 3 minutes you promised. A plan includes getting down to the nitty-gritty to include the systems, tools, processes, people, technology that we need to move the needle. A plan includes a set of goals, not just vague notions. A plan includes the means to measure progress towards a set of goals. For example, the FNM said they had a plan to find a new buyer for Bahama. You remember that? Now, what was the plan to accomplish that? They never announced one because you didn't have one. It was just fantasy. Remember your big talk about saving up to $500 million per year from tackling corruption? And that was fantasy too. The reality is you never had a coherent plan to accomplish anything meaningful in that regard either. In fact, the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index says that the Bahamas is more corrupt since you took over.
Wow. All over the world.
No, that counts.
You were trying to create problems for you to solve. This, of course, blew up in your face after arresting and charging prominent members of the PLP only to lose all the way up to the Privy Council. Remember the idea that over the hill was to be transformed? Again, no plan. You bragged about in this house over and over, like you did something meaningful over the hill. You haven't moved the needle. I see you're almost done with the Southern Recreation Grounds, though. I give you that. Maybe you'll complete it before election. Then maybe you could campaign on that, and Paul Pines, you can campaign on the fact that there are no more dump fires.
Wow.
But then that's the end of it. It'll be nice to get something for the Bahamian people out of the 60% VAT increase. And the $4 billion in net direct government debt you will have added by the end of the upcoming fiscal year. And given that I don't believe your projections, I suspect the debt will be higher. But we shall see. You also failed to communicate this terrible state of government finances, and you failed to communicate any detailed plans and detailed the sweeping harm done to our economy by the pandemic and the resultant emergency orders that you recklessly and incompetently imposed as the competent authority. You failed to convey what it will actually take to get back to a normal sense. And we're not done with the pandemic yet. We're still aware that there are still dangerous strains out there. What I heard were a bunch of ideas passed along by the Minister of Finance, filtered through a public relations polling machinery, trying to pass off a strategy, trying to pass it off as skillful stewardship. But surely the Minister of Finance must know these numbers don't make sense. You must know that the revenue targets will not be met. And this itself is a very serious matter, particularly as it is these that investors, including banks, who are so essential to the recovery, this is what they look at. That's why this process is so important. Surely the Minister of Finance knows that there are arrears as it relates to water contractors like Aqua Design, Bahamas, and Consolidated Water. Something as basic as water. Surely the Minister of Finance knows that based on the estimates, there are significant arrears to be settled, including on the National Drug Program. And you come here talking with the PLP and loosely about arrears. Surely the Minister of Finance knows that borrowing to build sidewalks is not a prudent strategy.
On each side of the road, narrowing the road.
And then you bring myriad of tax breaks without fully assessing the cost. The microbreweries that you have a love affair with,
Who's that?
twice in 4 years,
Who is that?
they get concessions.
Who is that?
Common Brewery, the largest brewery in the Bahamas,
Who owns that?
where Bahamian people are invested through NIB. They suffered through the pandemic. What have you done? What have you done to help them?
Who's the microbrewery? Who owns them?
There is clearly something we don't know here. So we got to keep digging on this issue.
Who owns the microbrewery?
As far as your line estimates go, I wish I had the time to go into them. But I just want to tell you this. We're watching you. We're watching you.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that in these line items, there are no election slush funds.
I already see them.
So we're going to be examining these lines very closely.
Write it down.
We're watching you on behalf of the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, let's look at the rest of the tax break plans. Let's call it a plan since that's what they call it. We see reduced VAT, perhaps for foreign purchases in Grand Bahama and Article, since Bahamian benefit from these exemptions already. The benefit as described for Bahamian, my view, is a cynical plot. That's how it looks. As first-time buyers already qualify for the exemptions, so the benefits largely fall to those buying second home. The VAT waivers for Family Island Development Act on a limited list of goods will perhaps increase revenue leakage, so we can expect a continued fall off with VAT. We told you then, we tell you now that VAT works best when you have few exemptions, not more. We've advised you on this before. The New Zealanders who advised the country on VAT's implementation have said this. These exemptions will cause more leakage, which will further erode your revenue targets, which are already overstated. In addition, the Minister of Finance has conceded that holdups of VAT refunds is choking businesses. So the VAT that would be exempt from the border for certain goods would further erode the tax base. Listen, when I examine these exemptions as a whole, I see great potential for fraud and leakage. When I examine them fully, I see opportunity to take care of friends, family, and F&M. The $40 million program about jobs, it's all about electioneering in my view. An employer who took on 5 employees at $400 per week under this program would have to collect well in excess of $100 million in VAT per year to really pay them. So this is a reach. What I'm saying here is your concessions are half-baked schemes. It's pure electioneering. You're seeking to see how you can drum up some votes and buy some votes, perhaps. It's a disastrous, failed strategy. The Bahamian people are onto you, and they're not falling for it. It's a day late. It's $1 billion short. Mr. Speaker, last I checked, you paid nearly $5 million 18 months ago to put up some domes. If I remember, $6.4 million to build 200 plus domes. That's about 30,000 per domes or thereabout. I want to tell you, it absolutely broke my heart. East Grand Bahama, it broke my heart 2 weeks ago. To drive through your constituency, Sweeting Ski in particular, to see people living in tents.
Government missing in action.
Almost 2 years after Dorian. You paid nearly $5 million, nearly 18 months ago, but to date, fewer than 80 domes were built. So the Bahamian people are asking, where the dome money gone? Someone got paid to put up the domes, yet the domes aren't up. I note that your unaudited financial statements do not speak to it specifically. So we want you to tell us where the dome money gone. Those unaudited financial statements laid here in the House is quite telling. I wish I had time to go through it page by page. Next, after all this, you failed the Bahamian people. The member for East Grand Bahama referred to your response to this Dorian disaster as a national embarrassment. And I agree. I agree completely. It didn't have to be this bad. Next, you blame the pandemic, but the pandemic responses have been poorly handled as well. There's still no provision for free testing. In fact, you cut the health budget by $1 billion.
That's big business on that.
You keep claiming everyone is giving the country praise for your handling of the pandemic. But we still at level 4 in the CDC COVID travel advisory. We still rank 18 or higher in the region for vaccinations. We still hover around the bottom of the WHO COVID Global Index. On top of this is the fact that the nonsensical application of the emergency orders caused unnecessary harm to the economy. And it's still doing it in some areas of our country. For example, you removed curfews in Exuma, but you make businesses close at 9 p.m. How nonsensical. Make this make sense. Harbor Island, who never had a curfew, you now make them close their businesses by 9 p.m. Except for the hotels, of course. But the small businessman suffers. But yeah, I did remember you say you're gonna take care of the poor next time. You keep talking about how you lose 3 years. What you did was to squander two golden opportunities to show leadership, to show strength, and to bring the country together. But every time you sowed division, you sowed disunity, and you blew it. You failed us. And the Bahamian people ain't pleased. Mr. Speaker, in addition to being non-realistic, in addition to sowing disunity and showing poor leadership through two great opportunities to show strength, the Minister administration lacks transparency and accountability. We have yet to see the detailed plan on the Lucayan Renewal Holdings and Grand Lucayan Resort. You have yet to table in this House the lease on the post office Town Center Mall deal. I know an increase of $1.5 million for the post office operations. I'll deal with that in the heads, but I wonder whether there's anything related to that. You're spending $37 million in expenditure of the health visa money, and you yet to bring any report to this House on pandemic spending, although you're required to do so by law. We have no report from the Fiscal Responsibility Council, which you are required by law to bring by the end of March. We have no detailed reports on the Irma donations, and the people of Ragged Island want to know where the Irma hurricane money gone. We have no report to date on the donations for Dorian. And the people of Abaco, the people of Grand Bahama are still asking where the Dorian hurricane money gone. We have never been told how much we paid those foreign QCs to prosecute the Bahamian political figures. And let's not forget, the Oban files are still missing. We never got a report on the removal of the BPL board. You never laid that IMF loan agreement. And now you have a new one from the World Bank and you ain't laid that either. So you failed on transparency and accountability too. You're a failure.
That's not good. You're a failure. You have failed us.
But Mr. Speaker, if that ain't so bad, they lack compassion too. And this budget demonstrates that.
That's the real offense.
And what's more troubling to me is that you lack compassion.
That's the offense.
It breaks my heart when I land in Marsh Harbor too. It boggles my mind almost 4 years later when I land in Ragged Island. Yes, you're a national embarrassment. And even as this administration bungles the Dorian recovery, we see almost $5 million cut from the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness budget. After all this, $5 million cut from the disaster preparedness budget. You gotta be kidding me. We're still in a hurricane zone, you know. We're still at the beginning of the hurricane season. And I find it stunning that we appear to have already forgotten the lessons of the recent past. Meanwhile, we still have people living in cars without enough food. This administration brags about its stewardship. The incompetent response of Dorian and COVID has left the country worse off. No, we didn't have to be this bad. But Mr. Speaker, this fairy tale must end. This fairy tale must end. And this government must present a credible plan. And when I say you have no plan, what I mean is you have no credible plan. But when we go through the Alice in Wonderland budget, I only see make-believe numbers. Paper can stand still and let anybody write on it. Bahamian people believe you're just winging it. You come today and you talk about exemptions in July to buy hurricane supplies. Maybe you forgot the hurricane season actually starts June 1st. It started already. But I'm not surprised because you have a reputation of coming here just trying to wing it. And it's disappointing. We see no money in the budget or provisions for the Exuma Hospital or Family Island clinics, any of them for that matter. And there is still no nurse in Ragged Island since Irma. By the way, it'll be 4 years. Your compassion or lack thereof knows no bounds. Today I walked in after lunch. There were 10 young Bahamian women standing in the sun with placards. You talk about a nursing shortage, we still have none in Ragged Island. You talk about nurses leaving the country. These young women are almost completed their studies. They're trying to meet with you. They're trying to meet with you, but they have to come here, stand in the sun with placards. They only want to finish their degrees so they can make a contribution to the Commonwealth of Bahamas. And you need them. And they're Bahamians. It's the Bahamas. You shouldn't have to stand in the sun to get the attention of your prime minister, who is a physician. This is reprehensible. Mr. Speaker, I have great pains.
The chair recognizes honorable member for Bamboo Town.
I was going to allow the member full stride, very exuberant. But the facts are, Mr. Speaker, the ministry has about 40 nursing students at UB, about 40, between the TCN and the RN program. Of that 40, Mr. Speaker, there are 37 of those individuals who've gone through the clinical trials at PMH and who have been accommodated over the past 18 months of our exposure with COVID. We have now come to realize that there were about 3 or 4 persons who were missed out on that rotation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is being addressed. And for the member, Mr. Speaker, it was this minister, this administration that met with the Nursing Council and saw to it that 70 nurses who had not been allowed to take their exam for some 15 months to sit their exam in November of last year. And we made provisions for all of those nurses who passed their exam to be brought into the public service. This administration did that. We are now going to accommodate those student nurses, Mr. Speaker, and we're going to see to it that those nurses would be able to sit their exam this coming November as others were allowed to do so last November. And in addition, Mr. Speaker, in this budget, the government has allocated some $8 million for Family Island clinics. $8 million. But more to come.
I want to thank the minister for the intervention. And I promised the 7 or 8 young aspiring nurses who stood in the sun today that I would speak with you on this. This Bahamas, man, you shouldn't have to stand in the sun to get the attention of policymakers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government kicks the can down the road. They claim they brought.
You had a meeting with them. Let's cancel the visit. That's the reason why it was out there.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that you protect my time. I notice The Speaker,
To agree to meet with them. Then it's got to.
we have a plan though. PLPBahamas.org, I invite you to go there. It's a plan for Bahamian empowerment, Bahamian home ownership, financial literacy. It's a plan that speaks about foreign direct investment. We got a plan for Grand Bahama. It's a 3 to 5 year growth plan. Plan to raise the minimum wage to $250. A plan to reduce VAT to 10% across the board. A plan for a sovereign wealth fund. Speaker?
No, honorable members, the member for Exuma has the floor. Honorable member for Pine Ridge. Continue, honorable member for Exumas.
It's a plan to realistically address increasing revenue generation. It's a plan to increase investments in infrastructure, technology upgrades with new industries, new public-private partnerships, and a robust infrastructure investment fund. And we've thought it through. These ain't half big schemes. It's a plan to expand sports, medical, religious, and heritage tourism. It's a plan to expedite reconstruction in Abaco, Grand Bahama, and Ragged Island. And there's much, much more. You can see the executive summary on plpbahamas.org. Yes, we do have a plan. But this is your fourth budget. And we're still waiting for a credible plan. In the absence of one, this administration is spending as if there is no pandemic. It's spending as if Grand Bahama, Abaco, and Ragged Island are up and restored, like it's all good. And you're spending like there is no tomorrow. You're projecting revenues as if there was no pandemic. And at the same time, you're borrowing recklessly and you're blaming it all on the pandemic. The Bahamian people have had enough. You've squandered yet another opportunity to press the reset button at this budget time and chart a course for our country to progress. You've squandered yet another opportunity. You have failed to restart the National Development Plan as we recommended 4 years ago, and this must be done as a matter of urgency to set this country on a sustained path for progression. The Bahamian people deserves the truth on these issues. They deserve more responsible financial stewardship than you're offering them. So I close by laying it plain. Yes, this is an Alice in Wonderland budget. Yes, the revenues are woefully unrealistic and absolute fantasy. Yes, the expenditures appear understated and underreported. And as a result, the deficit is likely to exceed the $1 billion that you project. The debt to GDP ratio is likely to be well in excess of 100%. These are perilous times. These are uncharted waters for our country. And you bring a fantasy budget. You don't lay out a credible plan. You don't inspire confidence one iota. We are maxed out and we're rolling over loans like a hamster on a spinning wheel. And we have a looming debt crisis with no discernible debt management strategy presented. As for your so-called plan, 4 years in, still no vision, still no plan, still no strategy, still no credibility. But the good news is, this is your last budget. And I am saddened. But it is by far your worst budget. And I cry shame on this administration. This budget is a failure, Southern Shores. It even fails as a proper election budget. You failed at that too. Your promises are half-baked, ill-conceived, unrealistic, a day late, and $1 billion short. And whilst it is filled with promises, many of these promises will not be fulfilled because you're out of money, and thankfully, you're out of time. Mr. Speaker, I am grateful to the magnificent, fearless people of Exumas and Ragged Island for allowing me to be their voice in this place. And I reiterate, I will continue to serve you with diligence now and into the future. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many.
As many, the chair reckon. The chair now recognizes the member for South Beach. The chair recognizes the member for South Beach. Members.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Deputy, I greet you in the grace and peace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, love of God, the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with each of us this morning, this evening, and tonight. So I just wish to start by saying I'm fully vaccinated. May I begin by making a few references to our previous speaker who, as I see, left the room. Because I have always liked and respected the honorable member for Exuma.
Take it easy.
And I have found him to be a credible, worthy representative of the human race, whose venerable digosity and integrity I applauded and admired. I'm troubled by a few things that he has said this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, in light of the fact of some representations that have been made in this honorable space by himself just a little over a year ago. And if you would please permit me, sir, I don't have the physical document,
Go ahead, my brother.
but I give an undertaking that I can provide it for you at my earliest opportunity.
Your integrity is good.
As reported in the media at the end of March in 2020, I think it was a member for Exuma who spoke about borrowing. You would remember, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy, and he said that and I quote here, the minister's administration's current budgets for unemployment, food, rental, and social assistance during the COVID-19 crisis are woefully understated and should be aggressively increased.
You sure he said that? Don't be. He didn't say that. He didn't say that, don't be.
He said, Mr. Speaker, he said, sir, he said that he expects that the public debt, as reported in the media, and I shall provide you a copy of this, sir, will increase dramatically in the next 12 to 18 months. This is what he said.
That's what he said.
Reaching a debt to GDP ratio of over 100% from the current level. And I lost it, sir. I mean, over from the current level. He further forecasts a funding need of between 1 billion and 2 billion to keep the economy afloat.
He said that? He didn't say that. He didn't say that.
He further said, sir, he also said, this is what he said, sir, to attract tourists when the COVID-19 crisis fades. Now he speaks about having a hope. He speaks about us depending on, my interpretation, external forces such as tourism on which our economy is based, and financial services. But here's what he says: to attract tourists, which he then therefore endorses that hopefulness expectation. When the crisis fades, Mr. Cooper said that the government should offer aggressive incentives, including reduced taxes on airline tickets for a 6-month period and the removal of certain VAT and or hotel room rates for the same period.
Let him sit down, please. Let him take his seat. Let him take his seat. Now you're ready.
Here further is what he also said, Mr. Speaker. Here's further what he says. And this is what troubles me about comments that are made from time to time in this honorable house. And, you know, in this environment, we now have records to which we can refer. He said the following, and I stand to be corrected because this is a newspaper report. I don't have the benefit of the hindsight. He said enterprises such as Bahamas Power and Light, Bahamas Air, Water and Sewage Corporation, and ZNS should be scrutinized. You use your interpretation, I have mine. Thus, freeing up over $100 million in annual subventions, in addition to freeing up over $750 million in debt and hundreds of millions of dollars in future pension obligations, while allowing for reduced costs to the consumers, which will allow for more discretionary spending, hence increased economic growth for all, end quote. All right? Basically, unless it's my opinion, he is saying sell Bahamas Air, sell ZNS. That's my opinion. Sell BPL.
No.
Is what I understand. Because, sir.
Beach, the member on the point of order. The chair recognizes Exumas and Ragged Island.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not short on words. I went to Ellen Coakley High School, and they taught us how to communicate effectively. The member quoted me, which sounded familiar, but then he chose to put an interpretation which seemed to add words to my mouth. The member for South Beach ought not do that. When he does that, Mr. Speaker, he is misleading because he is attributing to me things I did not say. If he wishes to quote me, Mr. Speaker, then he should quote me accurately. This budget, Mr. Speaker, increases the amount being spent in subventions
All right,
to these corporations.
all right, Exuma.
So when I talk about scrutinizing them, Mr. Speaker, I talk about limiting subventions. So had they taken my advice, Mr. Speaker, had they been taking my advice, Mr. Speaker,
Exuma,
to scrutinize and limit, we would not find ourselves here.
All right. Your point of members. Your point of point of order is.
The member is misleading,
All right.
and I ask him not to attribute things to me that I did not say.
Member for.
Mr. Deputy, I apologize to the honorable member for Exuma, whom I again admit, admire and respect. I went to SAC. Let me make it clear. I went to SAC. Okay. So, if we want to talk about communicative skills, from the days when I was in Form 1, which was grade 8, we knew about inductive and deductive reasoning.
Oh, carry on. Carry on, you can see,
And I don't care how you slice it. I don't. When we talk about saving $100 million in subventions, so which is required by each of these enterprises for their existence,
we're talking about firing.
then and further to save the public purse $750 million in annual obligations with regard to pensions. My interpretation, sir, I mean no offense to the honorable member, and I mean that sincerely, sir, I don't mean that no offense. I interpret
Members, that's South Beach,
scrutinizing
please.
to be said.
Right.
So, okay.
Member for.
And I am not putting any words in his mouth. I don't wish to ascribe that to him. I take full responsibilities from that through the exercise of my inductive reasoning skills.
Chair recognizes Exuma.
Mr. Speaker, again, if the member leaves that on the record, Mr. Speaker, he is imputing things to this member that he did not say. When I say scrutinize, Mr. Speaker, I'm not here to teach you how to govern, man. Right? So if I wanted to say sell, I would have said sell. I said scrutinize. I said reduce subventions.
Member for Exuma. Member for Exuma.
Mr. Speaker,
Member for Exuma.
if the member wishes
Members, order, please.
if the member wishes me to conduct classes for the cabinet, I will do so. But if I say scrutinize, that has a meaning in and of itself, Mr. Speaker. And I
Exuma.
invite him not to put words in my mouth.
This is the second round at this. Exuma. Members. I'm on the members. I know this is the budget debate, and members. I know this is the budget debate. Based on the point of order, Exuma. Based on the point of order, I have to concur with the member for South Beach. I don't think he's improving any. I don't think what the member for South Beach said in his submission, in his summarization of what and his concluding his own point or his views is not misleading. He has, Mr. Speaker, Exuma's, he is merely making his own summation of what he think your point was. That was not, Exuma, we're not gonna carry you unless you have another point, a different point of order. The chair recognizes Exuma and Ramkey. Sorry, Ragged Island, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I simply ask the member to not take my words out of context, because when he does this, Mr. Speaker, it is misleading. I do not believe that the member will do so intentionally, right? But I invite him, Mr. Speaker, to not take anything I say
You made that
out of
point.
context because it's misleading.
I made a point, and I would allow an objection simply on you explaining what you perceive to be a comment you made misinterpreted. The chair recognizes again the member for
Mr. Speaker,
South
let me
Beach.
just conclude this segment of my presentation by saying once again, I certainly don't by any means wish to offend the member. I love the member, I respect him, admire him, and I just leave it there. And
Very well, South Beach.
if
Very well.
necessary, so I do wish also to say, sir, that I have watched the news, listened to the news ever since I was a child. My father was a fastidious observer of the news. And in all, and then of course, as many of you would know, I then eventually I joined the media. So about a front row seat of the history of this country. And I know of no government ever that has been as transparent and as accountable and forthright. Let me give you an example, Mr. Speaker. The government of this government took the most courageous step, I believe, legislatively, in enacting a fiscal responsibility act. And sir, one of the requirements is to make a presentation at certain intervals in this parliament, which has been done. Now, as Obama has said, Mr. Speaker, point of order, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes Exuma and Ragged Island on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, the member is misleading. The act requires the Fiscal Responsibility Council report to be laid in this House before the end of March. It was not laid, Mr. Speaker. So for the member to say that this administration is in compliance with the Fiscal Responsibility Act is misleading, whether he realizes it or not. The Minister of Finance knows that it was not laid, right? And he ought to advise his member as to what the truth is on this issue, so that this parliament is not misled, Mr. Speaker.
South Beach, you could.
It was not. It was not.
Last year, December, a report was provided for the Bahamian people and for this man. That report, sir, in this House, projected a budget deficit of $1.3 billion. That report also projected a deficit this fiscal upcoming year of some 950 plus. I don't remember, I certainly stand corrected, I can sit to be corrected as well, that there was a single objection to those estimates. I don't remember. I don't remember a single objection to those. So my point, Mr.
No objection.
Members, let's hear South Beach, please.
I have a 96-page presentation. I don't want to get hung up. The bottom line is, I don't think that the previous administration has a moral leg on which to stand to talk about fiscal performances. None. Or any performance in that respect. In somewhat of a decent economic environment, there were 4 downgrades. In somewhat of a decent economic environment, there was about $450 million that was left for us to be paid.
Appreciate education.
In somewhat of a decent economic environment, the former Minister of Finance had to come here on day one virtually and borrow $722 million. And somewhat of a decent, not an environment where you met with basically three unfortunate and even sometimes unprecedented circumstances such as Dorian and the pandemic, not to mention Mr. Deputy, I love that brother and sorry, the member, and I just leave it there because the honest truth is, when we talk about plan, I'm going to come to a couple of these things in my presentation. Talk about plan and plan like, doubling investment in education, plan like 10,000 jobs in the place already. Plan, when we talk about plan, I'm going to talk about plans which have been delivered.
Deliver.
Just give us a minute. Now, Mr. Deputy, I stand here today with much and tremendous. I won't, sir. I promise you that, and that is them. Tremendous gratitude, same as I did some 4 years ago when I was first appointed as the Minister of Education. I am grateful today, sir. I'm grateful this day. I'm reminded this day, Heinrich, that 52 years ago, this day, I and the likes of Sean McQueenie and Bishop Walter Hanschel and Monsignor Alfred Culmer, some of you would remember Paul Major, we walked up the aisle in the old Emerald Beach Hotel and received our high school diploma 52 years ago today, this day. Yes, that same big red machine that we just referred to a moment ago. I ain't showing up nobody, man. Y'all are blessed, man. Y'all are blessed. Ellen Coakley was my family. In that audience, Mr. Deputy, sat my late mother, who on that same day, 52 years ago, was 39 years of age. It was her birthday. Today, she would have been 91. I honor her memory and the spiritual guidance that she continues to provide. I'm grateful for the many and varied experiences that I've had as a minister and a member of Parliament, particularly seeing the smiling faces of our little darlings of this nation when they engage in classroom instructions and beam when they have learned something new. Amen. That, Mr. Deputy, is the symbol of hope for our Bahamas. I could not have made this journey without the guidance of the Almighty, the Omnipotent One. My life is grounded in the ethic similar to the greeting hymn of St. Paul and to the church in Ephesus, found in the first chapter of that epistle when he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of our Father and Savior Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places, accordingly as he has chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy, without blame, before him in love." In addition to his guidance, he surrounded me with a loving and supportive family. I pray for and give most gratitude to my patient and long-suffering wife, Michelle, who has stood with me 100% as I serve and continue to serve. She never expected it to be like this. I honor my children, 5 daughters, Aisha, Kendra, Shiva, Shakti, and Sanjay, who have never wavered in their love for me on this journey. Thank God for the added blessings they have given to me and my grandchildren. I love them so much. I should have had them first. Alvante, Alexio, Alex, Andreas, Cario, Drew, Shamar, MJ, and my newest grandchild, baby August. Thank him for my siblings, for Charles and Rodney, my sister Christina, cousins. Thank him for the great members of the South Beach community, the magnificent electors who graciously placed their confidence in me and chose me to serve them these past 4 years. I thank God for my brothers and sister on the other side They are my friends. Though we may have ideological differences, I respect and admire them as well. Lord knows I have been in South Beach the recipient of their bountiful charity and welcome and hospitality and gracious regard that exceeds my greatest deserving, Mr. Deputy. I thank that great South Beach team who has been so faithful, committed, who are imbued with a deep sense of service, led by team leader Shirley, Lindsay and Verdell and Sherry and Adrienne, Joyanne, Derek, Luther and Matisse and Viola, Kel, Sharon, Cassandra, Cheryl and Terry, Viola, Marvin, Cyril, the dedicated office staff, Raquel and Jack. The Speaker, everyone who started this journey with us didn't complete it. But while they were here, they gave it all that they could and did. Speak none other than Mr. Tony Albury, a friend and a mentor and advisor who we lost to COVID last year. May his soul rest in peace. Rise in glory. Whatever I have done in this government as the minister could not have been possible without the generosity and the confidence of the people of South Beach. I promised them that I would be available, and I have done that every Thursday from day one. I've been in town, I've been in my constituency office, hearing of the concerns and the hopes and the dreams, aspirations of our people. I've never left until the last person is seen. Each and every week from day one, I've walked about, visiting neighborhoods and chatting with residents. Promised a massive cleanup of that community, beginning with derelict vehicles, and I'm happy today to report that as of this speaking, over 800 such derelict vehicles have been removed at no cost to those residents. We've cleaned lots, kept roadsides clean. We have helped many persons with their various needs, rent, utilities, school fees, medical, dental, and vision issues, funeral expenses, myriad of other matters. To the extent that we have helped scores and scores, many times, people from other constituencies. In the last year, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy, during the pandemic, with so many persons not working, we have given out hundreds and hundreds of vouchers and food parcels, vegetables, boxes of groceries, totaling over $70,000. We met an unfinished park in Faith Garden, which through the generosity and the guidance of the member for Carmichael and the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Works, is now being completed and should be by the end of this calendar year. Each year we have honored mothers and fathers and provided materials for students as they approach the start of school. We've distributed from our own funds hundreds of tablets and devices. We've helped many homes who didn't have internet. Of course, we couldn't do this alone, and I am grateful to the many workers. The Speaker, Deputy Sir, I'm a proud product of Camp Road. I was not born like some with a proverbial silver spoon in my mouth. My successes are due largely to love and investment made in me by my paternal grandmother, Lita, my parents, the elders of the Camp Road community, the many educators who over time stimulated me. I was the first in my family to attain and accomplish many things: high school diploma, college degree, other achievements. I want the boys and the girls who reside in the Camp Road area and other communities of similar constituency to know that through God, dedication, and a spirit of self-determination, they too can achieve their great. I want them to know that good can come out Camp Road. Proud of the affiliation of father of the honorable member from Angleton, who also served as a friend of my family, my mother in particular, who was a guide and a guard, a great help to her over her years. Walked with her during her final years on earth, suffering from breast cancer. Want every boy and girl within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to someday tell their story as I'm telling mine, where they were born. Not so much where they come from, but rather what they come to. I want especially for the people of South Beach and Camp Road and the many who are deemed to be over the hill neighborhoods, feel proud of their respective community. Trust that my colleague minister, the Member of Parliament for Freetown, would make available to schools and community centers in Freetown the book written by Mrs. Philippa Taylor, an outstanding product of Camp Road, entitled A Walk Through Camp Road, which heralds great women and men who have emerged from that area, their contributions to the development of the Bahamas. I hope there will be many more books written. Mr. Speaker, I stand here today with deep affection, gratitude, respect, and admiration for Dr. the Most Honorable Hubert Alexander Minnie, Prime Minister of the Bahamas, who followed me a few years later at that great space in Fox Hill. I don't mean Fox Hill, I don't mean the all-inclusive, I mean St. Augustine's College, who himself, like me, rose from humble beginnings to become a renowned medical doctor in this region and the leader of our great party and our great nation. Thank him for the confidence he placed in me to serve in his cabinet as a minister with responsibility for education. And I hope in most instances I have not let him down. Mr. Speaker, please permit me to also express a deep sense of gratitude and affection and respect to the hardworking executive management team at the Ministry of Education, led by the inimitable and indomitable Mrs. Lorraine Simonet Umbris. She keeps me on my toes and keeps my path lit with a focus. I accept and honor that she causes there to be jealousy among this side, on this side, but Mr. Minister, Mr. Deputy, she is with me now, and let them grieve and gruel. Proud of the director, Dr. Marcellus Taylor, and the undersecretary, Ms. Sarita Clark, our deputy directors, Sharon Poitier, great team, Mr. Julian Anderson, our financial controller, Ms. Marie Darling, and Deputy Permanent Secretaries, Mr. Donovan Turnquest and Ms. Dawn Cullum. We lead a team of dedicated professionals. We work with a team of focused collaborators. And I'm proud of the work that we continue to do. I'm fortunate that I am sharing this journey with them. Sir, every human being born with a purpose to impact the world in some way. From conception, each is destined for positions of mass influence, purpose to influence one soul at a time. I accepted the responsibility of leading the charge to revamp the Bahamian education system, which at the time was failing to equip our students to navigate the blessed opportunities of a dynamic, evolving 21st century universe. I viewed the appointment as my divine duty and privilege to lead strategic efforts in fostering an education system in which students unshackle their God-given abilities and offer their refined treasures in service to a waiting world. From the outset, sir, enshrined in this government's philosophy is education, was the need to address challenges in this country's education system identified by the 2016 National Development Plan Secretariat. I see Exuma talks about us not doing so, but every single thing we do in education is guided by that plan. These included a national skills deficit, substandard numeracy, literacy, and oracy levels, a lack of inclusiveness in the society and in education, and a glaring deficit of equity and access in education and unemployment. The FNM's 2017 manifesto stated that this party recognized and accepted that the progressive and sustainable economic development of the Bahamas rests entirely upon the proper education and training of its people. The Committee on the Rights of the Child explains that education, quotes, goal to empower the child by developing his or her skills, learning and other capacities, human dignity, self-esteem, self-confidence. Education goes far beyond formal schooling to embrace a broad range of life experiences and learning processes. The Speaker, Deputy, upon assuming office in 2017, the data revealed that at every assessment level and at the point of exiting school, too many of our students were failing to meet basic requirements of knowledge and skill. Example, less than 1/2 of those leaving the 12th grade met the minimum requirements for graduation, 46%. This was coupled with the fact that educational methods were outdated. Consequently, these paramount concerns essentially shaped my ministry's priority agenda. The record shows that we have made substantial advancements towards our goals, even in the face of adversity. The government's ambitious agenda for education is clearly articulated in its manifesto and in my maiden address in this parliament. There were many things we committed to do, have done, are on course to do, and will do in this administration. We did not make ambiguous and inconsequential and empty promises like the party opposite, who are famous for overpromising, under-delivering to the Bahamian people. Nowhere in our manifesto did we rush out of the gate with the superfluous statements such as 10,000 jobs in the first 100 days, or double the investment in education, or we have the answer to crime. Being an educator myself, having worked closely with the system intermittently these past 40 years, firstly as a private school teacher, then as the founder of the Yeast Institute, collaborative effort between the Ministries of Youth and Education, the Catholic Church, and later the Leadership Development Institute, I knew the problems of education. I also had some ideas about its remedies that were needed to fulfill the aspirations of our people and the demand of a dynamically evolving 21st century world. Our agenda comprised of 4 essential principles, namely, number 1, that everyone must know, value the significance of education as a tool for national development. Number 2, to create a stimulating and enhanced learning environment throughout the school system. Number 3, that learning never stops. Number 4, that students have a right through education to become all that they can be. Each of these noble aspirations, Mr. Deputy, the FNM and the ministry is succeeding. The unprecedented events of 2019's Hurricane Dorian, the 2020 coronavirus pandemic, though calamitous in nature, did not abort the ministry's mission to provide an inclusive quality education for all. The unfortunate events undoubtedly caused delays in some instances, but through the ingenuity in our teams at the Ministry and Department of Education and collaboration with education's stakeholders, the ministry's agenda is successfully being carried out. Built upon those core principles, ministry embarked on a zealous pursuit of several crucial objectives. Number 1, the continuous training and development of our teachers and educational professionals. The Speaker, at the heart of the educational experience, at the core of its very existence, is one person, the teacher, or as I like to say, the educator. He or she has evolved over the decades to be what I call an omni-professional. That'll be on the P's and Q's now. Having to be many things to his or her students. When I joined the teaching profession 47 years ago, my primary role was that of an instructor. Not so anymore. We are now called to create exciting learning environments that include active and relevant learning experiences that incorporate cooperative learning, student choice, and skills taught in a meaningful context. Teaching has moved from a teacher-centered approach to a student-centered approach. And our teachers have moved along quite nicely. Their development is about their future and the indispensable role that they play in the influential educational process. Today, Mr. Deputy, there is no factor in the educational process more important than teachers. There is no education, there is no educational system without them. And throughout my term in office, I could not be more proud of their ingenuity, creativity, dedication, innovation, and support. This pandemic, if nothing else, proved that. Their ongoing development is our ministry's central objective. Nowhere was that more important and vital than in the past 15 months through this pandemic, when because of the need to teach virtually, teachers had to learn new or upgrade their skills in technology. In addition to the training provided by the ministry through webinars, courses, and otherwise, I'm especially proud of what I term the peering concept, where teachers more skilled in technology partnered with one who was not and supported their eventual proficiency in the teaching process. This is most inspiring. The ministry aims to ensure that teachers and curriculum officers are aware and utilize the best strategies. Accordingly, our teachers have been provided with opportunities for retooling by means of professional development sessions, both face-to-face and remotely. Mr. Speaker, the stark reality is that there are many students with special needs that go undiagnosed. The Global Education Report indicates that teachers have to teach to all students. It is for this reason that such workshops are available for all teachers to take advantage of. Between 2017 and 2019, preschool, primary, and high school teachers engaged in dynamic in-service workshop sessions. As the anomalous events of 2020 called for major adjustments, the ministry hosted its first ever virtual teachers conference in August, which offered 175 best practice sessions to support and enhance teacher skills amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021, at the beginning of the school year, the administrators conclave in August of last year, there were 300 school administrators participating in 23 workshops, preparing them for leadership in the new normal. Teachers also attended in our first virtual teacher conference in September, where over 2,500 teachers participated in over 45 sessions. Their topics included displaying a spirit of resilience, understanding psychosocial emotional needs of students, strategies for working remotely, learning management system training, and many others. Between January and February of 2021, over 2,600 teachers and administrators participated in a series of training sessions. Additionally, since the start of the new school year, teachers and administrators had the opportunity to book private one-on-one sessions with a facilitator where they were provided with personalized training specific to the learning management system and the educational management information system, commonly known as the EMIS. A session for parents were also held. I am also happy to provide, Mr. Speaker, Deputy, that some 250 teachers were also trained through the BTVI and MOE partnership. The advancement of our teachers, as I've said earlier, is of paramount importance to this ministry. We are cognizant that their advancement affects the growth of our students. To this end, Career Path section now seeks to improve teacher morale, recognize and reward excellence among teachers within the system, and improve the quality of teaching, the standard of education generally. After several years of abeyance, in 2019, the section began preparing for a new assessment cycle to facilitate the promotion of eligible teachers within our system. 2020, the Career Path section offices reopened, handbook revised, and in 2021, lead assessors were identified to begin training of assistant assessors, school administrators, and teachers for promotional assessment. Our senior and master teachers that serve within our schools have been supported through virtual meetings and workshops to prepare them to conduct relevant educational research. During this upcoming fiscal year, the Career Path section seeks funding to begin the 7th assessment exercise of the Career Path for teachers in the amount $136,200. This funding will be used to facilitate engagement of lead assessors and the materials required to begin the assessment process. Number 2. Mr. Deputy, the second critical objective of our ministry is curriculum reform. It is sad to note this evening that there had not been in the Ministry of Education an holistic revision of the Bahamian curriculum in decades. Not since 1982, 39 years ago, has the public education system undergone a system-wide revision of its curriculum until now. Yes, there were ad hoc, episodic adjustments here and there, but not until this administration, under the leadership of the director and deputy director, Ms. Sharon Poitier, there have been a complete revision of the Bahamian public education curriculum. And now there is established a 5-year cyclical review practice, even though there will be ongoing assessments and adjustments made as necessary. Teachers need something to teach. Students need something to learn. The revision of the curriculum was central to the F&M's promise, because we are committed to a future that Bahamian children deserve and demand. Our curriculum must keep pace with their evolving interests in their national and global history, geography, potential, and context of their own homeland. The officers of the curriculum division are to be commended for their work in breathing new life into the curriculum. Each subject officer headed teams of teachers comprising public and private school educators who met consistently to discuss, update, and make relevant to students each subject area, bring them in line with the 21st century teacher. The school curricula, we all know, extends beyond the classroom walls and, in fact, has a significant role in shaping society. This fact inspired the curriculum division to take aggressive steps in the reform of their curriculum over the past year. For instance, in 2019, the division launched its first ever curriculum officers conclave, engaging state stakeholders, constructive dialogue to enhance and modernize our educational curriculum. Consequently, that 5-year development cycle has been designed to regulate the systematic development, design, and revision of the curriculum. And to date, some 7 circular guides have been launched, with 11 more expected by August of this year and 26 to be launched at the end of 2020. Curriculum teams, though Dorian came sweeping into our doors, even the pandemic could not stop our officers from finding ways to continue the education of our children. They did everything humanly possible to reach our students across the Bahamas. And this power of innovation kicked in, and curriculum officers, in conjunction with district superintendents and teachers, developed national pacing guides for all grade levels, for all subjects, which outline both the topics to be taught in a given term and the timeline for the content to be mastered. Mr. Deputy, in addition to the pacing guides, 2020-2021 school year saw the full launch of the Department of Education's virtual learning platform. Under the supervision of curriculum officers, teachers got to work on creating instructional kits using pacing guides as a compass. To date, some 2,000 digital kits were uploaded to the learning management system for the benefit of all of our teachers and students across the country. And 3,000 hard copy learning packets were prepared and distributed to schools as needed. Again, our credit to the director, the deputy director. I am happy they have taken, as it were, bull by the horn and have run with it. Number 3. Mr. Speaker, Deputy. I'll get used to calling you Mr. Deputy. Arguably, the most significant promise made and delivered by this administration is the digitization of the Bahamian education system. No student, we believe, no educational system can have a secure future or diligently deliver its educational product in this 21st century without a potent, constructive application of technology at all levels. Go ahead and give a clap. Upon coming to office in 2007, Ministry of Education was too dependent on an archaic, manual, and lethargically defective system. The decades prior to 2017, listen to this. The ministry had made several staccato efforts to infuse technology into the teaching and learning process at the astronomical cost of tens of millions of dollars. Almost all of it a failure. Previous PLP administration secured loans from the IDB to achieve this goal. And what materialized, however, was a large-scale, uncoordinated effort and a huge waste of resources. Mr. Deputy, schools received computers and other equipment that could not work because there was either inadequate electrical supply, inconsistent, or in most cases, no internet facility, inadequate maintenance program, insufficient training or manpower to implement or sustain the millions of dollars that had been invested in technology. Items were stockpiled in warehouses and corridors rather than being distributed to the school. Shortly before we assumed office in 2017, there was a mad dash to distribute antiquated computers and industrial printers in schools for apparently appearance. What could not be used were eventually dumped, including thousands of dollars of outdated ink. A rusty, unused satellite in the Ministry of Education that was bought to facilitate the Bahamas Learning Channel was one of the last vestiges of the PLP's mismanagement of millions of technology dollars. I said earlier a moment ago about promises and delivery. As I stated earlier, I love you, Mr. Speaker. This government's mandate was to expand the use of technology, to ensure that each school was a smart school, to fully integrate and utilize the latest technology in all schools throughout the country, to facilitate distance learning, to enable all students deprived of specialist teachers in math, science, and other subjects to benefit from lectures and tutorials in real time, to provide everyone in the education cyber space to access the world's libraries, platforms, materials, and methodology. The fruitful management of today's educational enterprise, we believe, demands a digital process that produces student-centered learning outcomes based on the timely availability of data. Only technology can do that for us today. Thus, true to our promise, their fate is grief. True to our promise, in September of 2018, the Ministry of Education commenced a $17 million technology upgrade of its 172 schools, 60 satellite offices, thus beginning the mammoth task of connecting all campuses and buildings with fiber optic cables and robust Wi-Fi capability. The tumultuous events brought on by Hurricane Dorian and COVID-19, though destructive in nature, served as accelerators of the technology upgrade. Amid a financially strained economy induced by those two twin tragedies, there were setbacks, of course, in the execution of these initiatives. But through resilience and determination, we soldiered on. Therefore, this spirit, Mr. Deputy, eventually launched in September 1st, 2019, the country and the region's first virtual school, designed primarily to assist students in the remote family islands who had suffered perennial teacher shortages in critical subject areas. Concurrently, the Department of Education had been implementing a plan to consolidate its scarce resources through the amalgamation of schools. Commencing this process increased the chances of providing a more equitable education across the system. This also meant a reduction in operational costs, especially as it relates to the maintenance and upkeep of the physical plant. To date, the Deputy, 13 such schools have been amalgamated. Prior to Hurricane Dorian, the notion for many students learning virtually may have been far-fetched. in retrospect, I can say the virtual concept was divinely set up. And indeed, it was a preparation for what was to come. Because one day after its launch, Mr. Deputy, Hurricane Dorian made its ruthless entrance into our country. Ruthless. Students from Abaco and Grand Bahama, whose lives were mercilessly unhinged, continued their learning through the virtual school. Little did we know at that time, that within 6 months of the virtual school launch, there would be part 2 of this unimaginable saga. COVID-19 forced the shutdown of school buildings across the country. However, guided by the motto, safety first, educational always, the Department of Education immediately devised a plan, or we have plans, in collaboration with educational stakeholders from the public and private sectors. That's what the FNM is famous for, plans. To ensure and plans that are delivered. Thus, the virtual school, which originally was meant to tutor some 500 or so students, now had to, because of Dorian, deal with 1,800. And by March of 2020, had to accommodate 48,000.
No problem.
And here is the issue, Mr. Deputy. We did it.
No problem. No problem.
Mr. Speaker. Oh, sorry, Mr. Deputy. Am I saying that we reached every single child? No, we have not. But that has been our aim from day one. We have the theme, no child left behind. And as I present to you today, you will see that we continue to do everything within our power to reach the unreached. During 2019 and 20 school year, all students across the country had to resort to virtual instruction. In the middle of 2020, the Ministry of Education engaged one-on-one, that is a BTC affiliate, to provide an interim learning management system to connect students and teachers virtually due to the COVID-19. Also in 2020, Cable Bahamas channels 295 and 296 were used to broadcast the ministry's curriculum so that, again, those students who were not able to access by virtual means would be able to continue their education. Later on in 2020, in October to be specific, we approached Cable Bahamas and Alive and indicated that their 3G bandwidth was insufficient to accommodate the now 75,000 students who had to engage the system daily. Within a matter of days, they were able to increase it from 3G to 10G, which now comfortably enables them to do the work they need to do. Also in 2020, Mr. Speaker, we engaged Cloud Korea in an active directory to help organize the user and computers on the network. And in March of this year, the virtual school moved from the facilities at the Learning Resources Unit to the Mabel Walker Professional Development Institute so as to accommodate more teachers. Just 2 months ago, sir, the Ministry of Education signed a contract with Cable Bahamas to facilitate fiber redundancy and diversity in Nassau and Freeport data centers so that an establishment may remain online even if the primary network goes down. That plan offers a substantial backup so that the establishment can continue to operate online even with an internet failure. Mr. Speaker, as you can see, the ministry is adopting a proactive approach in facilitating the process of education as we make every effort to minimize interruptions to that process. We will all agree today's 21st century universe is a digital culture surrounding today's learners and educators. It has afforded the Ministry of Education the ability to redefine and enhance teaching and learning environments with the utilization of tools such as the internet, the learning management system, video conferencing, mobile device. The aim is to increase digital communication and the use of ICT in all schools, and to increase ICTs as tools to help teachers create a more learner-centric environment for all students. Sir, I am proud to announce today that through the dogged focus and effort in digitizing this education system, the future for our students is secure. As of this minute, 100% of the schools and satellite offices on the islands of New Providence, Eleuthera, and Grand Bahama have been digitized. 3/4 of the schools and buildings on Abaco, Andros, Bimini, Exuma, and Long Island are also digitized at a cost of nearly $8 million. We have just schools on some islands, such as Cat Island, Auckland, Crooked Island, Meguana, San Salvador, Rumkey, and Inagua. That's about 14 sites for another $2.5 million. And of course, as we know, it is anticipated that after the construction of the school on Ragged Island, it too will become a digitized environment. This revolution, sir, is not only about laying down a physical infrastructure. It also necessarily included supplies, equipment, and eventually programming. Simultaneous with the laying of fiber optic cables and the installation of access points, the Ministry of Education piloted a tablet initiative in government preschools to provide differentiated instruction and individualized learning. This has also allowed a holistic approach to learning that provides an effective strategy to meet the needs of all children, from the challenged to the exceptional. Though we began with 10 schools initially, sir, I'm proud, Mr. Speaker, to report that some 28,000 students from pre-K to grade 6 have been supplied with an Amazon Fire 7 tablet.
That's how we roll. That's how we roll, man.
I am further delighted to report to you this evening, sir, that each primary school teacher has been supplied with a laptop and a projector to facilitate the teaching and learning process. Even though the ministry was buffeted by the pandemic, it became apparent to us thousands of students were without a device or internet or both. Many of these students were on our lunch program. Some suffered from disability, others racial or ethnic minorities, and others yet from low-income families. Naturally, without these implements and with the educational process now completely virtual at this point, formal educational experience for these disaffected students would have ceased. Thankfully, through the vision and passion and dedication of corporate citizens, such as Leno Bahamas, in partnership with the ministry, devices and internet services were distributed to thousands of public and private schools. To date, sir, I am most happy to report that some 47,000 devices have been now distributed to public school students in the coming.
Real Minister of Education.
There are more that we need to provide which we expect will be supplied either through the resources of parents as they return to their jobs, or will be supplied by the Ministry of Education where the absolute need exists, hopefully in partnership with corporate society. It is important to note, sir, that the ministry thanks and will publicly thank in an appropriate ceremony each donor of the Leno Learning Link tablet donation program. Mr. Speaker, Deputy, our fourth critical initiative, I am so proud to announce this, is the attainment of universal pre-primary education in the Bahamas for all students. For all students, ages 3 and 5 years. See, when we talk about vision, I always affectionately refer to him as Doc, but in this place he's the member for Kalani. But if he would kindly permit me and you permit me, sir, that's Doc.
Do it, Governor.
This is what caring is about. If we are not going to take care of the baby, and he is a baby man, you could write off a society. You can write it off. If you do not get it at the very beginning. Finland, Mr. Deputy,
5,000
requires that in order for you to be a preschool teacher, you have to have a master's degree.
Even Deputy can.
A master's to be a preschool. There's a teacher plus 2 teachers' aides in every classroom in the preschool environment. You will find this duplicated in other countries like Singapore. That's how absolutely critical they understand that investment to be. In the last Bahamas census, it was identified that there were some 12,300 children between the ages of 3 and 5. Of that number, the record shows that only about 5,000 were enrolled in any preschool program, mostly in a private setting. And of that 5,000, only 1,700 were registered in a government preschool. This is the vision of Doc. He insisted that we were going to start with the babies. Because we know, Mr. Deputy, it's a well-established fact, supported by studies from all over the world, including those recorded in publications by the Inter-American Development Bank, that the first 5 years of a child's life is the most decisive experience in human life. In its landmark 2015 publication entitled The Early Years, the IDB noted, and I quote, spending on effective programs for young children is not charity. It is an investment that, if done well, will have very high returns. And it is an investment that, if not made, will lower the returns to the substantial investments being made in children, for school-age children throughout the region. Let me give you a story, sir. When we came to office in 2017, this is anecdotal, I have no empirical data to confirm this, but I have heard it enough from the grade 1 teachers that I believe that less than half of the students entering grade 1 was not prepared for grade 1. They could not read, could not write, they didn't know where they lived, and a host of other essential information that grade 1 students. Less than half. Less than half. If you're not ready for grade 1, that means you're not going to be ready for grade 2, grade 5, which means it's unlikely that you're going to graduate. And we have committed as a country, along with the other countries of the world, that by 2030, our graduation rate would be 85%. 85%. When we came to office, it was 46%.
What?
46. 60.
What?
60.
No, No hocus pocus government.
This F&M government realized,
Long
Long Island, Saudi Lucho, my beloved, that the long-term future of this society, in all its social, economic, and cultural spheres, rests almost entirely with how the investment is made in the earliest years. We also know that we didn't have the space, but that our children needed to be in a proper program. Therefore, thus, to achieve this ambitious mark, again with the vision of DOC, the ministry over the past 3 years partnered with suitably qualified NACOB registered private preschools to enroll young students where no such spaces existed in government preschools. And we gave to each school per child $2,000 per year voucher. Each school, each child. As of this presentation, we started on 1,700 students because of the government-supported program. Today, Elizabeth, it is over 6,000. We have 98 centers, $5.3 million. You heard it this morning in his presentation, that now on the Family Island, land will be provided for those who are qualified. That land will be leased to them at very, 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 very attractive rates. And there will be concessions on their building materials if this is an expansion or if it is a new building. And they will receive grants to get started in a preschool environment. And I feel a shout coming on.
Market education. That's how we roll. We dance here. Huh? That's how dog roll.
Last year, November, Kalani, I don't remember what the number was. I sat under a tent by the accelerator program on off Glasser or whatever that is. Accelerator program. And I watched younger women and others, proprietors of preschool institutions, receive from this government. This government who is accused of not being compassionate. This government grants, not loans, grants of $25,000 to expand their preschool.
Yeah, say that again, man. Yeah, repeat that.
I
believe that. Repeat that, yeah.
$1 million was given out last November to a bunch of preschool operators in the amounts of $25,000 grants. Like I in St. Francis. There can be no better guarantor of a successful future for our young children than getting an early start on their formal educational training. The F&M government committed it. This F&M government has delivered it. Because it is about their and our future. Mr. Deputy, I give endless credit to our team leader who reminds us that all children deserve the same attention, special attention. That wonderful soul who keeps our conscience in pristine shape, sitting over at my right, whose first name begins with L, about special education and why these students need special attention.
No problem.
Continuous, because it is easy. And the thing is, we have noticed that because of the shame, unfortunate, that parents feel about their children who suffer disabilities. They keep them home, lock them away, and so on. And we now have seen a kind of awakening that there's nothing to be ashamed of. And the facilities in our ministry now is growing and expanding to assist these parents and their children to find ways to empower them to maximize their potential. And they have awesome potential. It's just a matter of bringing it out. This government's philosophy, again, is to create and maintain inclusiveness in education. Therefore, the ministry's Special Services Unit was mandated to make available equitable and effective support and intervention services that elevate the educational, social, emotional, psychological, spiritual needs of students and all persons in the system. This is accomplished by ensuring that all students in the Bahamas have equal access to the services and support, by facilitating student learning and development, by implementing holistic programs where students can benefit. To this end, during the 2017-18 academic year, programs to assist students with special needs were launched at A.F. Adley Junior High, Doris Johnson Senior High. A vocational unit was established at Doris Johnson Senior High for students aged 16 to 19 to assist them in developing functional skills in the world of work. Subsequently, the program at A.F. Adley Junior High was established to provide educational support to adolescent youth transitioning into junior high. Meantime, the Special Services Unit continued to expand the following programs that were already in place. The Bahamas National Screening Program, so that they could get a jump on identifying students with special needs. The Individualized Education Program to assist, again, students in their education development. The Functional Academic Curriculum for Exceptional Students was also introduced. And we had one. The Early Childhood Development Center, in conjunction with the ministry, was established to support children 3 years of age. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the Special Education Unit, administrators and teachers were part of the committee for the safe reopening of schools. Several models, face-to-face, hybrid, remote, were developed for the continued delivery of educational opportunities for students with special educational needs. Government's commitment and support to academic excellence was demonstrated in the donation of some 300 devices for students receiving special education in various schools and programs in New Providence and throughout the Family Islands. I now turn, sir, to the schools manager. As you know, Mr. Speaker, Deputy, the bizarre events of the 2019-20 fiscal year uprooted the normal routine of the daily management of schools. We know about Dorian, and we also know about the ravages caused by COVID. As a result of Dorian, displaced students and teachers from Abaco and Grand Bahama had to be posted temporarily throughout the Bahamas. Teachers were assisted with relocation and rental allowances. In 2020, some of the displaced teachers were able to return to those islands and saw some appreciable recovery. However, to date, some teachers remain sadly displaced. Schools management, in the meantime, was unable to recruit teachers from Cuba as a result of COVID. And this created a void, as we expected to employ about 60 specialist teachers. However, the Cuban teachers' contract, teachers whose contracts expired in August 2019 and 20, were granted a one-year extension. Every year, the ministry seeks to hire about 200 teachers to replace teachers that have retired or have left the system. And this exercise engages Bahamian teachers by way of the University of the Bahamas and will come at a cost of approximately $5 million. Because of the distress that our teachers have suffered over the years, let me just pause a moment here to say that I extend our sympathies and prayerful support to the family of Miss Denise Hanna, who works out of our ministry headquarters. Miss Hanna died somewhat suddenly about a week ago. Yes, about a week ago. P.S. and I sat with two daughters, beautiful daughters, one of which is studying international business in Israel, having a wonderful experience. Very interesting. 2 daughters, only children. So I also am advised, just a moment, I'm now remembering that we had could I ask Mr. Deputy if I could get some assistance here, just with a name, please, from member for North Andrews. Eleanor Hill is a teacher at, she died yesterday morning. And those 2 members of our community, originally from Alabama. So, eternal rest grant unto their souls. Let perpetual light shine upon them. May their souls and the souls of the faithful departed through the mercies of God rest in peace and rise to glory. This is why we have the Employee Assistance Program. We also have the psychosocial and other support mechanisms in the Ministry of Education. Because this pandemic and Dorian and other unfortunate events in the lives of our associates, our colleagues, do sometimes render them emotionally tortured and in need of our love, support, but also professional help. We had a situation, as all of you now know, of an incident at the government high school, which I understand this week there will be a memorial service for the young man who was murdered. It is very sad. Visited with the family. The story goes, as some of you may now know, that the survivor was the actual target of the attack and happened to escape. And that survivor is now under, I may say so most respectfully, suicide watch, because he feels so bad that he, the intended victim, in a sense, his friend with whom he lived, and I understand cousin, gave his life. So we have 2 families that are now suffering. And there were homeroom teachers who were obviously close to these young men that themselves are going through certain traumatic reactions. So we have in place a psychosocial unit that throughout the school year, a number of initiatives are put in place to meet the needs of our colleagues, students, members of our community. There are sessions for students and parents. There are hotlines, as well as social media pages. There are innovative other arrangements. We have established a STAR mentoring program with students from New Providence, Andros, and the USA, again, to bring a deeper sense. As you know now, mental health has become a topic of great interest and concern, largely because of, I think, Prince Harry or somebody, and what has been happening in the United States and elsewhere. You hear also in this community where people are encouraging others who feel that there is some stress associated with your mental health to come forward and receive the help that you feel you need or you do in fact need. We have a robust plan to assist our colleagues in the Ministry of Education, and I'm happy that many of our colleagues do in fact take advantage of it. Mr. Speaker, one of our more vexing issues, however, in the ministry is the issue surrounding human resources. They arise because of delays in confirmations and reclassifications and promotions. Additionally, the issue of permanent and pensionable is now very prominent. Apart from retaining staff, the function of the Human Resource Department is to attract, develop, and motivate staff to succeed in their duties. Some of you know about the 52-week program. It's officially called the National Job Creation Skills Enhancement Program, which is managed by the Ministry of Public Service and National Insurance. And it's requested of ministries to recommend persons assigned to them from the program to be appointed on temporary month-to-month terms. The Human Resource Unit has submitted a total of 78 recommendations in our own ministry. Appointment to the permanent and pensionable, or commonly known as PNP, establishment of persons appointed on that temporary will move what they call to temporary month to month. As I advised in the mid-year budget, there are some 636 general service workers, GSW. These comprise of teachers, aides, security officers, custodial and janitorial staff who will be eligible to transition from contractual to temporary month-to-month terms, then eventually to permanent and pensionable, provided that they maintain acceptable performance and attendance records. The regularization exercise commenced in late February of this year, and to date, 184 of the 636 recommendations have been submitted by the HR department to the Ministry of Public Service. It is anticipated by the end of the 2020-2021 budget year, just in a couple of weeks, at least 300 recommendations would be forwarded, and the remaining persons would be processed in the next budget year. As the demand for qualified and trained teachers increases, the ministry is pleased to report that during the 2021 budget year, approximately 110 new trained teachers, assistant teachers, craft instructors, teachers' aides, and guidance counselors were appointed. These have all been posted to schools throughout the country, and there are approximately 60 additional persons to be processed. During this past budget year, or this budget year, we also saw a total of 412 recommendations submitted to the Ministry of Public Service seeking confirmation of appointment. This is rather vexing, and it does lead to low morale among some of our teachers. This includes 268 trained teachers, 25 guidance counselors, and 54 security assistants or officers, and 65 janitorial staff members. Additionally, there is the issue of promotion for school administrators, which is an ongoing exercise, again, being conducted by HR. This is largely due to the large number of outstanding matters. All persons who are appointed to act in school administrative posts for 1 year to test suitability for substantive promotion in the 2018 exercise have been recommended for substantive promotion, and persons appointed within the 2019 exercise are currently being processed. Further, there is a review underway of the career path for guidance counselors and security officers. And that has been completed, and it's anticipated that appropriate recommendations for the advancement of suitably qualified officers will commence in the next budget year. Mr. Deputy, another seemingly intractable issue that greeted me on my first day virtually in the ministry is the issue of the school board and library employees. Now, in terms of the school board, a cabinet subcommittee was appointed to consider this issue due to the fact that there were persons working within the school system, many for a number of years, who would retire without benefits. It was agreed that these persons should be regularized, a process which is now underway. As such, in this upcoming budget, provisions have been allocated for such as this. I commend the dedicated and hard-working staff of the ministry's HR division, and they are hard-working, most dedicated. They are saddled on a daily basis, poring over files, correcting anomalies, doing salary progression, compiling ACRs and other mundane but critical tasks. Many people think that this HRs, you can just stick anybody there. No, so this is a specialty and requires someone who knows what they're doing. This is just not someone you can pull up off the street, going through people's information. In addition to having a certain mind and an understanding of confidentiality, which is not pervasive in our land, I accept, It is also a particular and a peculiar skill that first of all must be grounded in a certain science and experience. Very, very technical. It's not something that can be easily mastered. It takes some time. The thing, however, is, and I've said this, and the permanent secretary have said this, and we have advised our people to understand that this file is not a collection of paper. This is somebody's life. This is somebody's family, somebody's career. You are to treat it with sanctity and respect and a sense of urgency. Because some people, like school board employees, have been in the system 20 and 30 years with no address to their situation. But the FNM government is addressing and will address. We are not passing the buck on this. We have cleaned up the dirty work, unfortunately, of politicians who shamelessly circumvented the public service hiring protocols for selfish gain. Member for Garden Hill spoke about this, Minister for Public Service. They did not care about the public first. They apparently didn't care about stringing people along or the emotional and financial toll it had taken on these employees who contributed to the delivery of quality education in this country. They deserve better. And with this administration, they shall get it. This work takes the HR officers away in large measure from other very important components of their mandate, which is to attract, develop, and motivate staff to succeed in their duties. Now, of course, Mr. Speaker, Deputy, in just a few weeks, the ministry will hire a cohort of what we call all-purpose workers who will be posted in the Ministry of Education schools throughout the country, some 169 of them. These workers will, in the first instance, support the safety measures in our schools and allow administrators and security officers to do their respective jobs. They will also be required to fill HR deficits on the various campuses where they are posted. We recognize that the pandemic is not over. Prime Minister keeps saying this. And that we will need to exercise continued caution to minimize risks to students and staff on our campus. You know, we were elected to a 5-year term. We should continue to work until the end. You know, I remember, Mr. Deputy, one day the New England Patriots was beaten up on a team. And maybe it was the Dolphins, but it was beaten up on the team. So they asked whatever the coach's name is, you know, the fellow who don't smile or nothing. Belichick. They asked Belichick, why would you do that? And Belichick says, we train our players to play 60 minutes a day. We train our players to play for 60 minutes. All right? The last I checked, the Bahamian people gave us a 5-year. Last time I checked.
Boy, Jeff, you on a roll today, boy.
Mr. Speaker, these workers are necessary to conduct. Right now, the Ministry of Education suffers a serious HR deficit. Right now.
Is it 169? I hear that number, right?
These workers, yes, ma'am. These workers are necessary to conduct temperature checks, ensure students are masked, maintain social distance, and follow other protocols prescribed by the Ministry of Health. Mr. Speaker, this is a well-thought-out recruitment drive precipitated by the climate in which we live today. We cannot place the responsibility of maintaining safety protocols on the already overburdened teachers, administrators, and security personnel. The all-purpose workers will be education's equivalents to the COVID police, Royal Bahamas Police Force, and they will move between campuses as retired.
Members.
Mr. Speaker. For the past 26 years, the Ministry of Education has sponsored what is known as a teacher cadet program, which has ushered in a new generation of educators by inviting and recruiting students in grades 10 through 12 in public and independent schools across our country. Since 2017, you know they couldn't be in my class. Since 2017, they were going to detention, I was writing them up. 2017, the program has flourished in 32 schools on 12 islands across the archipelago. 228 students have successfully completed the 3-year curriculum and have graduated. During the same period, 24 program graduates have completed their studies at the University of the Bahamas and now teachers in our school system. An additional 41 graduates of the program are currently enrolled at the university, and 24 hope to join them this year. Many of these graduates have admitted that their commitment to pursuing a teaching career was nurtured and reinforced as a result of their membership in the Teacher Cadet program. 2020 program celebrated 25 years. In the boundaries of a streamlined budget necessitated by the global pandemic, the program was still able to thrive during 2021 academic year, facilitating 137 students at 27 schools on 12 islands across the archipelago. Over the past 6 months, more than 6 additional schools on our family islands have expressed a desire to join or to reintroduce the program to support many high school students who have a keen interest in teaching as their career of choice. The Teacher Cadet program is poised to embrace these students and their teachers, as well as the 51 students that will return to the program next year. The program remains committed to introducing no cohorts of students to this noble profession. With the necessary funding, we'll continue to carry out its mission, and that is to inspire tomorrow's teachers today. I draw the attention of this Honorable House and the Bahamian people to the Technical Cadet Corps program, the TCCP. Mr. Deputy, I continue to express my passion for the advancement of technical training and education, as it undeniably is a vehicle to independence. I would hope that at this point, the once twisted perception of technical careers is being dispelled, particularly during this era in which such professions are in great demand. These are the professions of the 21st century, those which are spurred by innovation, inventiveness, independence, innate skill, and discipline. This is why it is critically important to continue and to expand programs which provide opportunities for students to explore these fields. The cadet program is one such program. It is an after-school program that introduces students of grades 10 through 12 to high-level technology and engineering courses. More specifically, the program is designed to identify, recruit, and train students who show some degree of interest and proficiency in technically related fields. Firstly, within the sponsoring corporations, but also skills transferable to the wider industry needs of the Bahamas. The intended outcome includes early exposure for students who indicate interest and intention to pursue higher education in fields such as engineering, information technology, journalism, architecture, and other high-level technology fields. Mr. Deputy, program for the past 3 years has shaped the lives of some 314 students. This program has had many successes in aiding students identifying their career choices in these fields, and has contributed tremendously in furthering education of those students in those fields. Such mentioned certification. This IC3, IT Fundamentals, A+, Microsoft MTA, and Intro Java Programming and CAD, total some $13,990. BTVI, along with the University of the Bahamas, has worked hand in hand with the Technical Cadet Corps in offering its students who would have attained a C grade in BGCSE English and Math the opportunity to advance in the dual enrollment program at BTVI and Jumpstart programs at UB. The results of these programs have proven favorable to the Technical Cadet Program for students. Expenditure for the program for the government for such amounted in some $33,605. Additionally, students were also exposed to the workings of the corporation. The result of the summer work experience program. 12th grade students, that's those in the third year, were given opportunities based on their GPA to acquire those hands-on experiences and work. Parents, of course, have expressed concern as to whether the program is going to continue. It's very favorable among parents and students, highly complimented for its successes in assisting students in the career choices in the technical and engineering field. They have gained a wealth of knowledge, students that is, as a result of their involvement in the program. We believe that the program will evolve, however, in the upcoming season, because, as we know about the issue of COVID, it may be that it will move to a virtual classroom platform to be implemented as part of its instructional model. Turn now to examination and assessment. We have done extensive work in preparation and presentation of this matter, so I won't spend that very much time on it here, except to say to you that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy, some of the most unsettling effects of this pandemic were felt in relation to last year's national high school exam. The schedule was interrupted, and adjustments had to be made from every angle. The BGCSE examinations, which would have normally started between May and June, were pushed to July 13th. The exams were abruptly suspended on July 21st due to the rise in COVID-19 cases, and they resumed on the 14th of September, completing it on October the 6th, a date I know so very well. Meanwhile, the BJC exams were held from September the 14th to the 29th. The candidates writing the BGC exams, of course, were lower than in previous years due to the fact that a number of candidates already entered tertiary institutions. Additionally, a grade level assessment test, known as GLAD, for grades 3 and 6 were not administered in 2020. There were awards presentation held on April 26th of this year. And I'm proud to say that we had some very outstanding performers, such as Kamari Soy of QC, Chardonnay Garrick of C.R. Walker, Shakadan Wells of QC, Karen Simeon of C.H. Reeves, and Stefanato Roll of H.O. I would like to point out, Mr. Deputy, the fact that there were so many students who performed well on these exams, and there were those who gave it their best shot amid the challenging circumstances. If the ministry had reneged on its word to conduct the 2020 examinations, these students would have been robbed of an opportunity to prove themselves that they are winners. And winners in the sense that despite life's hardship, they can say, I will not give up. They can say, I will not live my life based on excuses. Instead, I will rise above my circumstances. I can say to you, sir, the ministry has no regret. We are glad that we did not listen to the self-serving naysayers who had nothing to lose if the national exams were canceled. The decision to hold exams was not an easy one. We understand that there was a lot of anxiety and stress, but life has shown us that some of the greatest victories are won through fire. And on that note, Mr. Deputy, we are pleased to confirm that the 2021 sitting of the national exams, inclusive of the GLAD, are underway. Now, yes, We have a shortage in the examination section. A number of vacancies due to retirement and death. And that shortage is going to become even more critical. Because, again, this is a specialized area. It's not someone you can pluck up off the street and just put there. I really want to say how much I appreciate Mrs. Evelyn Sawyer, the Assistant Director of Education, who has extraordinary her commitment to the nation's youth and her team. They are unsung heroes, passionate about their craft. I invite members of the work to engage these professionals on any issues relative to the national exam. You will immediately discover their professionalism, that it is undergirded with passion and integrity. This past November, a new contract was signed with the Cambridge International Examination. Built into this contract, provisions for at least 2 training sessions to be conducted by personnel from Cambridge International. It's important for new and current officers to ensure that their skills in assessment, development, and administration keep pace with international standards. During February and April this year, 2 training sessions were completed by Cambridge, and these virtual sessions were well received by the participants. Speak just briefly about the scholarships and loans. You remember last year, Mr. Deputy, that there was a pause in that particular delivery of scholarship to international universities. It has resumed this year. As we speak, some 2,000 Bahamian recipients, totaling a government contribution of some $45 million, have been the beneficiaries. What is of equal and impressive note, they have secured relationships with more than 30 international colleges and universities. 17 minutes. Institutions have committed to offering tuition waivers and discounts to any Bahamian student is accepted to attend. You stay with me, I'll buy you dinner. In 2018, the division launched a multifaceted public relations campaign to ensure that the public possess the necessary tools to access the government scholarship offering. Only dogs. Officers visited every public sector, and we had to launch a new website. Happy that there are today thousands of funds, thousands of applicants each year for a limited amount of funds. Mr. Speaker, let me just speak. Let me speak just a moment. Let me speak a moment about the physical plan.
Members, South Beach.
You know, Mr. Speaker, Progressive Liberal Party, side opposite, my dear beloved brothers, had 2 terms to try to construct a single classroom, much less a school. Much less a school. Not one classroom. Not one. 2 terms. Not one. 2 terms. 2 terms.
What happened to the classroom? Exuma had the beat, man. Don't start it again.
Well, the chair, on the point of order, the chair recognizes Exuma. Ragged Island.
I would just wish for the minister to refresh his
Members, let's hear the point of order from Exuma.
memory. I believe the Anatole Rogers School would have been built. And I would just ask him to refresh his records, Mr. Speaker. Right? But I do believe Anatole Rogers.
The chair, member for South Beach. Member for South Beach. Carry on.
I was trying to catch me an additional break. Mr. Deputy, let me, in full and frank disclosure, there were certain projects that they started. They started. Never complete. Never complete.
Well, I mean, what happened?
And you know,
The chair recognizes the member for Angleston.
Mr. Stebbins, I'm trying to recall. I know that I'm certain that's not correct, but I know for the E.P. Roberts Primary, which is an established school, but was a little rinky-dinky school, was the investment of millions in that school, and it's now a state-of-the-art school. And that was done during the period 2012, 2017, completed. And the minister has gone there. The minister also knows it has become one of the highest performing primary schools in New Providence. And so I do recall, I believe, the redevelopment of T.G. Glover and other projects of that nature in the Family Islands. I don't think it'd be correct to say that we didn't do one thing and couldn't finish it. I don't think that is correct. And I know that in Angleston with E.P. Roberts Primary School and the work that was done there, which was a complete overhaul of that school. That is, no, it's not a renovation. It was a redevelopment of that school. A redevelopment. That statement would not be correct, at least as relates to that school.
Members, let's hear the member for South Beach and the Minister of Education
Mr.
response.
Deputy, I withdraw it everything. Never mind. We have completed 63 classrooms since we've been in office.
4 years.
Actually, 3 years because we do nothing last year as usual. We completed. And I apologize to my beloved family on the other side. I don't mean to mislead or anything. Exoma always says that I try to mislead, and I don't try to mislead. He knows better. But anyway, Mr. Deputy, in the interest of time, I just want to say that there has been because of the COVID environment, our people have had to undergo a significant amount of adjustments in the physical circumstance. Okay, naturally because of social distance and so on, a number of sanitization and washing of hands and all of that, and the wearing of masks. Also, in order to assist the sanitization process, training sessions for our janitorial staff were conducted so that our facilities could be sanitized as much as humanly possible. For the fiscal year 2021, we have spent a total of $39 million on school repairs, 26.3 in New Providence, 6 in Grand Bahama, 4 in Abaco, 2.1 in Family Islands. And we know, of course, the repairs in those islands, Abaco and Grand Bahama, are ongoing. In this particular fiscal year, sir, we have budgeted $20 million for school repairs, inclusive of $6 million for critical structural repairs in 5 of our New Providence schools, and $2 million for Family Island cottages. Mr. Speaker, Deputy, I wish to say, sir, and I'm proud to say this, we intend to break ground during the third quarter of this year. We intend to break ground in the third quarter of this year on 2 new comprehensive schools, one in Matthewtown and other in High Rock, Grand Bahama. And the reason that we are going to complete those 2 new schools, although it would not happen in this term, is because we will continue in the next term and we will be able to break ground and finish it. We will continue in the next term. It is estimated that when these 2 schools are completed, it will cost a total of $15 million. Now, I want to say, sir, very quickly that, I'm going to speak briefly about BTVI and University of the Bahamas, briefly because the member for Kalani would have extensively dealt with this subject. I want to say, of course, we all know that since 2018, tuition at BTVI for all full-time students, and full-time means only taking 2 courses, member for Pinewood, 2 courses. When you and I went to university, you had to take a minimum of 15 hours, you remember that? It was reduced to 12, which was 4 courses. You had to take 5 courses to be full-time. Now at BTVI, take 2 courses full-time and the tuition is free. Free. University of the Bahamas, 2018, free. As a result, again, of the vision of Doc, the enrollment in those 2 institutions have exploded. It's gone clearly all through. There's not enough space on BTVI's campus now for the number of students. In this summer alone, they had to turn away students because they have only space for 1,500 students at BTVI. They had to turn students away. Further, Mr. Speaker, Deputy, when we came to office, less than 20% of the students at BTVI were earning certificates, rather certification in their school programs. Certification. So in other words, you finished the course, but you had to be also certified by an internationally recognized regulatory body. Today, 85% of the students earn certification. Certifications, let me just say to you, these certifications are from globally recognized certifications regulatory system. CompTIA, CompTIA, Cisco, the National Center for Construction Education and Research, City and Guilds, Microsoft, and other international certifications. Last year, 88 trainers in the Bahamas were certified, and 80 Ministry of Education teachers were certified just last month to be technical teachers. And these teachers will deliver dual enrollment in high school. And what do I mean by dual enrollment? It means that students beginning in high school at grade 10 can also, while they're still in high school, take courses at BTVI, so that at the end of their high school career, grade 12, they are certified in their various subjects. Certified. Additionally, 600 adults nationally were certified via virtual classes in September, and 800 students and adults will be certified, Mr. Kalani, by this summer, including 200 fully certified as trainers or craftspersons. Let me speak very quickly about the University of the Bahamas. In 2018, as I said, this F&M government guaranteed all full-time UB students free tuition, a first in Bahamian education history and a major plank in our manifesto. When the global pandemic hit the Bahamas in early 2020, the 2019-20 budget of UB, like all state-supported agencies, saw a reduction. In UB's case, as much as 22%. However, they continue to provide quality service for their students. While that budget was cut, we increased the tuition education grant to $18.5 million. Because of the damage to because of Dorian's damage in Grand Bahama, the UB's campus had been, I think it is in a private location, Pine Ridge. I think it's a private location, and they are now in the process, Mr. Prime Minister, of getting that matter to be sorted out. It was indicated earlier this year that the Bahamas should not recover until 2024, and that every effort must be made to do more with less. However, the University of the Bahamas, with the support of the faculty and staff, is committed to doing more this fiscal year with no increase in budget over the previous year. The university will redouble its efforts in striving to attain international accreditation while meeting the strategic goals. The university has run 2 successful fundraising campaigns before and during the pandemic. One in support of UB North after Hurricane Dorian, the other supporting students lacking technology. And this will increase and expand its international fundraising effort in this upcoming school year. It is also noteworthy that the university has also significantly increased its research and funded grant activities. This year alone, increases have been realized in excess of 3 million, while surpassing the numbers of faculty and student publications. Mr. Speaker, Deputy, the University of the Bahamas is traversing the course of becoming a truly global institution. Today, faculty members from all 5 continents are lecturing at UB. Students from over 18 countries and every island throughout the archipelago are enrolled in degree programs at the University of the Bahamas. What has definitely increased access to UB, Mr. Speaker, is the implementation of the government's tertiary education grant program. The enrollment at UB now is touching 7,000 students, touching. In addition, as was announced this morning, students coming from the Family Islands enjoy $500 a month allowance toward their accommodation each and every month. And those students, the first time going into university is now over 3,000 in the annual public hearing. I would like to bring it to a close. Mr. Speaker, I want to, before I close, really pay credit to our communications department headed by Mr. Byron Thompson, who over the past 3 years was tasked with the basic writing services which include disseminating information via official releases from the ministry to our many stakeholders. However, the events of 2020 necessitated the ramping up of communication efforts 100%. This young man, Byron Thompson, has done a tremendous job. Ministry of Education now has a profile unrivaled in its history because of Ed Talk and a number of other programs on the television. In August of 2020, the ministry's program initiative was expanded, providing more options to be informed. Stakeholders were afforded the choices of television, radio, or social media platforms. Communication section ramped up their output with the public service announcements and programs on ZNS, RTV, and the Bahamas Learning Channel. You will remember basic television shows, including Ed Talk, Ed Up, Ed Masterclass 101, Ed News Tidbit, and Ed Table Talk Unplugged. These programs inform the public of ministry's directives, initiatives, its progress and success, while showcasing the work and impact of school staff and reinforcing curriculum content for all. Last year, Communication section launched its free text notification update blog. And this initiative allows education stakeholders throughout the country to receive frequent updates from the ministry's Expenditure on these programs will cost some $34,000. I am proud to announce, Mr. Deputy, that the communications section is determined to again ramp up its effort with the return of educational student-based television game shows. $70,000 is allocated for the production of these shows. They include its academic, Science Bowl, Black Attack, Math Wise, I Want to Be, and Bahamian Social Studies. The monies also include set design and hardware. Some $20,000 is allocated for social media marketing. Quickly, the Department of Archives is one of the country's oldest heritage institutions. It continues to successfully carry out its mandate to preserve and conserve the records of historical, literary, and administrative significance, making them accessible to the public where possible. It is indeed commendable that the institution led by Director Patrice Williams and her outstanding team has maintained its professionalism and care of the invaluable historic and documentary heritage of the Bahamas, even amid COVID-19 pandemic. The government understands, Mr. Deputy, that the preservation of its historical records and archives is essential in a developing country, and therefore diligently supports and provides the framework for the department to execute its legal mandate. Additionally, the preamble to the International Council of Archives states that archives, along with the archivists and records professionals, are essential to good governance, accountability, transparency, and culture. To this end, the government will seek to replace the professional staff which the department lost because of mandatory retirement with new hires. Although earlier efforts faced many challenges, the government is committed to ensuring that young people are hired and trained so that the institutional knowledge obtained over 50 years ago is preserved. The archives can continue to accomplish its objectives. I want to say this evening, sir, Mr. Speaker, Deputy, proud of UNESCO, one of our key ministry programs, enabling through what's her name? Yeah, the leader there, Deidre Bevins. Yeah, Bevins. Over the past year, UNESCO was successful in securing funding for 2 master teachers to participate in online training. This commission, this UNESCO has received $50,000 from UNESCO to assist with the replacing of equipment and supplies. Under this lady, we have benefited tremendously, UNESCO, from a host of technical and financial ability. Our participation in UNESCO is paying dividends. A decision is expected this December on the Bahamas' application to UNESCO to have Junkanoo recognized officially as a Bahamian cultural celebration. Happy to report that approval was received from the International Dance Council for Junkanoo Dance, Bahamian folk dance, and liturgical dance be certified under the World Dance Council.
There you go.
Get that. As I said earlier, we are looking assiduously at regularizing the staff, long-serving staff at the National Library Service.
That's all I'm saying.
Now, Mr. Speaker, there's a revolution underway in education. Because this government realized that our students and this society must have a secure future. Unlike previous administration, the one most previous, who promised to double the investment in education, but actually saw a decline in real dollars during their term in office.
Let the money go. Let the money go.
This administration, who did not throw away $30 million on a property on Wolf Road that we do not own, and we do not have copious and uninhibited access to, and still do not have access to it.
Money to burn.
This administration, who didn't like the previous, wasted almost $50 million on technology, equipment, and material and supplies.
That's fiscally irresponsible now.
50 million.
You can't defend that. Don't try to defend that.
We at the ministry do not claim perfection, sir. We are just being perfected. For the last 3 years, we have been committed wholeheartedly to providing an education that will prepare our students for life. Exuma has nothing to do with this. This does not rest on his shoulders at all. The past 4 years have taught us, Mr. Deputy, some invaluable lessons. The legendary Mother Teresa opined that, quote, everyone can rise above their circumstances and achieve success if they are dedicated and passionate about what they do, end quote. I have often repeated that education is everyone's business. No one has the privilege of folding their metaphorical arms and sitting on the sideline.
No, sir.
Teachers, administrators, and the ministry have gone way above and beyond to provide a quality educational product.
Way above.
The interested participation of the students, parents, the wider society, stakeholders, all must reach in and embrace the plethora of opportunities that the new, invigorated, innovative educational system is providing. Mr. Speaker, I can't help it. When I was at St. Augustine, she had to swallow the dictionary. Mr. Speaker, it is my prayer that every citizen of our great country finds his or her path to success. I could not take my seat without highlighting the tremendous work of the various education boards and committees. Time would not allow me to name some of them, but I will. The record reflect the high level of service support and expertise the ministry and department have received from them over the years. There was sufficient room in our headquarters building. Several of them would have offices there. They have given us sound advice and guidance to craft policies to strengthen education in the Bahamas. In due course, I will thank them for their excellency. I also thank them because through their efforts, they have enabled us to have robust engagement with stakeholders from the wider society. And everything that we have done in the Ministry of Education, Mr. Deputy, led by this great magnanimous soul called Mrs. Lorraine Umbrista, who is the Permanent Secretary, we have done it because it is about our students' future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, member for South Beach. As many. The chair now recognizes the member for North Abaco. Chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I now move that the business of this House do suspend until Monday, the 7th of June, 10 a.m., 2021.
It's being moved and seconded that the business of this House suspends until Monday, the 7th of June, 2021 at 10 a.m. As many members that are in favor remain seated, those opposed will rise. The business of this House is suspended until the 7th of June, Monday at 10 a.m.